Hey everyone, Brian here. A little bit of craziness happened, so for the first time in our run, we weren't able to get this week's scheduled episode recorded. So what we're doing instead is we are unlocking an oldie but a goodie from a couple years back where we talked about Remedy's Alan Wake with our good friend Jack Gilbert. We thought it would be a relevant episode to cover because of the sequel that recently came out. And if you want us to cover that sequel, just hang around for a little bit. Maybe you'll see it. Anyway, we'll be back next week with our regularly scheduled garbage straight into your ears. Anyway, back to the show. What? When we were in Munich, we saw a musical called Der Medicus, which is based on an American novel called The Physician.
Oh, I thought it was a British novel. I had no idea.
No, the guy lives in New England. And so it's about a guy from Old England going to Persia to learn real medicine because it's the medieval
a prince,
era.
Can travel back in time with a magic knife.
Like the second number is just of the English doctor that he's apprenticing under, giving out, fake cures for things, and everyone has diarrhea. It was a diarrhea song.
It was a diarrhea song, and then and then he sings a song about how he's going places, man, and then his mom dies.
Yeah,
it's amazing how much of it I blacked out.
Well, the craziest thing about this production is that Jack and I did not realize the applause traditions.
Jesus.
In Germany.
Oh, I got to hear about this.
And specifically as they apply to musicals.
Let's hear it.
So in America, everything is pretty much set on like a timer. And I think also maybe in the UK too, it's like the audience will applaud, and regardless of how loud they applaud, the bows will happen and the next people will come up and the bows will happen and then the curtain will close and the show will be over.
Right.
In Germany, they don't leave the stage until you've stopped clapping.
It is a game of chicken.
So they have multiple types of curtain calls. Like they do it in different orders each time, or sometimes it's like just the leads bow again. There's like a whole...
There's choreography.
They must spend a whole day working on, okay, what are we going to do for the curtain call?
There was choreography. Like bow number 6 had a different dance than bows 1 through 5.
Yeah, so the musicals always have some sort of encore number. Dance of the Vampires, of course, famously has the number where they come out. There's no more set. They're just wearing silver like vests and singing in English. And
this sounds
the
like the
Physician
sex
had
dream
something
I had.
like that too. Yeah, Der Medicus had a similar thing, and we're just sitting there. I'm familiar with this. I had seen a lot of plays in Germany before, and everyone's just still I had also performed in Germany before. Well. Germans, just like the Hungarians, do the iron clap where they all start clapping in unison, not to the beat of the song. Very emphatically not to the beat of the song.
No. They will
start
make their
clapping
own
in
beat,
unison.
yes, and you will follow it. And this lasted conservatively 15 to 20 minutes.
Least.
No way.
Oh, it was
At least,
so long.
straight up. I thought I was losing my goddamn mind.
Jack started screaming, "Stop! Make it stop!" Like midway
I
through.
looked around. I was like, this is, and everyone seemed like totally like, it was just like blank faces all around. Like, no, they weren't enjoying it. No one was having
a good time. There were two
people
that show,
clapping
not in Munich.
for the sake of clapping.
There were two college kids in front of us who were just baffled by the whole show, but
they
were
were on the
ridiculously
same
entertained
level.
by the three
they
of
were on the
us.
same level as us, but everybody else was like a suburban, like 50-year-old, and they ate it up. They loved it.
They loved the brown face in that show.
Let
me tell you.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast willing to confront the traditions of the German musical theater. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And joining us today, a good friend of ours.
An actor, a writer, a longtime employee of NBC.
And the only man from Ohio who I respect, Jack Gilbert.
He's wearing an Ohio sweatshirt right now.
I am.
Ohio University sweatshirt?
That's the one.
It's the Ohio University.
No, that's the other one.
Nope. I'm pretty sure it's...
It's the Batman.
Hey, because we're going to be talking about a goofy little game, and I think you have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, I met Brian and AJ. We found each other in Germany and swapped numbers.
Your English has gotten so good, Jack.
Thank you.
He's from Ohio, Germany.
Yeah.
Ohio. Yeah. Well, there's many Germans in Ohio and vice versa. And I followed them back.
Jack actually brought COVID-19 to the United States.
Patient zero.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, yeah. I mean, we all know each other largely through a theater, which we've talked about many times and we'll never name directly on this show. When AJ and I were talking about putting together an episode about this game, immediately he was like, I know just the guy. So we're very excited to have you here today.
Yay. What made you pick this game? Like, was it the remake, the remaster, I should say, or what brought it on your radar? Because it's not a new game. I mean,
well, this game has haunted me since its release in 2010, and it's a game that constantly is brought up, I think, in the same kind of breath of Heavy Rain, in that it's like it revolutionized storytelling in gaming, and I've always kind of felt like I was going crazy because I played through this game and I thought the storytelling was quite bad, and everyone around me was saying how great it was, and I was just like, I must have missed the reference points. Do you know what I mean? I've never read Stephen King before. I had not seen Twin Peaks at the time. I am watching it right now, which is a huge trip playing Alan Wake, because some locations I think are like just dancing on the knife's edge of copyright. That was why I wanted to do an episode on Alan Wake, because I was trying to identify why Control worked for me more than Alan Wake did, and I thought it would be an interesting game to revisit because we do like talking about storytelling in games, and I hate this game. I hate this game so much.
I sort of am in a similar boat. You know, I got Alan Wake on Steam years and years and years ago, and it was for many of the same reasons. I'd heard about the quality of the storytelling and, you know, those sorts of things. I've also always tried to play Remedy games and just felt myself like slipping off of them. So I was like, you know what? If I just play it for the show, then I'll be able to really play all the way through it. And I also hated it. I think I hated it even more than AJ. But yeah, I think
that is correct.
I think that the ways in which it fails narratively are actually kind of interesting, and by and large thought it would be worth discussing on the show. I think before we start talking about Alan Wake, one of the biggest references to sort of that this game lives in, and one of its biggest illusions is to the world of Stephen King and his novels. And
it's the opening quote of the game.
When we start the game, we see Alan driving down the road, and he says, Stephen King once said that nightmares exist outside of logic.
So,
and there's little fun to be had in explanations. They're antithetical to the poetry of fear.
And then the game spends the rest of the time.
The victim keeps asking why, but there can be no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and it's what we'll remember in the end.
I'm right back.
My name is Alan Wake. I'm a writer.
It's like the way that it does this, like it sets this up and then it spends the rest of the game in rather exhausting detail explaining its own internal logic, which is
Stephen King once said that my writing is like when you get the French fries at McDonald's and then those last fries are at the bottom of the bag. Sure, it's not high cuisine, but they're the best damn French fries you'll ever have. Especially when he just starts narrating in the middle of a conversation.
Yeah, like he's
just
talking over someone else. Yeah,
and AJ started mentioning that he was talking over other people.
Yeah,
I thought to myself, maybe this is because he is afraid of the dark.
And it really is exactly, Brian, that delivery. It's like it's totally inflexible. So intense, it just like goes like
I found
straight
myself
through
in
everything.
A town that I couldn't quite explain. It found me at the bottom of the well. I found the well to be very dark and foreboding. I am Alan Wake. Like there's no like it's just one long run-on sentence. Would you say that the writing in Stephen King's novels is better than Alan Wake's writing, or would you say it's basically on par? Is it like a good pastiche of it?
It's 0% is a pastiche. I was reminded. It's so funny. You were like, you like Stephen King. You'll like play this game and help us figure this out. I found, aside from the two quotes, I found almost zero.
Excuse me. There was a man named Mr. Maine.
There sure was.
Yeah, that's true.
It is so, but it's so much more. And I'm a huge Twin Peaks nerd, and like they borrow so much more from Twin Peaks. So
Very heavily, yeah.
If aside from the fact he's a horror writer, it seemed like just such a. It had nothing. Like I didn't even know why he was quoting Stephen King.
The other thing is that he's not a horror writer, which is the other thing I had forgotten since originally playing it. I played the remaster. They've remastered the game. They're releasing it in anticipation of Alan Wake 2 that is coming out pretty soon. There was also a DLC in Control where you were able to actually go back to Alan Wake town of Bright Falls and solve, I guess, another mystery. I don't know. I didn't play it. Did you play that DLC, Jack?
So I'm playing it right now, actually. Who's the psychiatrist from Alan Wake?
Hartman, Dr. Hartman.
Hartman. He has become this horrible monster, and the people in Control have captured him, and he's escaped, and so you have to like take down Hartman.
The whole game starts out basically in media res. Alan's car has been wrecked. There was a hitchhiker who like stood in the way of the car, and oh no, and he like flipped it.
I realized the hitchhiker was part of my story.
Well, he also opens this nightmare sequence with the line, "It was wild and dark and weird, even by my standards." And I can't... first of all, it's like the nozzle was given his own video game in terms of delivery.
No, the nozzle especially is that like bright flashing light that gives you instructions.
Oh yeah. Alan, please go forward. Follow the light. I am the nozzle.
And that voice is something that basically leads us through a gameplay mechanics tutorial. It's one of these horrible, like contrived, I am to move through the game kind of bullshit.
It's such a great, like that generation, like having a tutorial before the game starts, and the game actually does a good job teaching you each thing piece by piece, but it's like, no, we have to start with a nightmare that he has, that he describes as being like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare.
After we accomplish this whole movement tutorial, which is basically teaching the mechanics of the game, core things are you run around, you dodge attacks, you get a flashlight, and in order to defeat the guys, you have to focus your flashlight on the guys, and then you have to shoot them with bullets until they explode.
Which you already have the flashlight.
Also, I have a question about that mechanic.
Yes.
What in God's name does it mean to focus a flashlight?
I have no idea.
Is that just like...
It's real. It's a real thing. Like, have you ever had like one of those big mag lights? Like the mag lights you can like twist
it, yeah. But it doesn't absorb more battery power.
Well, you know,
you
have to. Have to focus it on them while they stand there, and then you tell them to step upstage 2 steps, and they hold up their hand, and then you check the focus again.
Right.
And then if
that's how you focus lights. Yeah.
And I also
it's
I
a
like
theater
to imagine,
joke.
I'd like to imagine that as Alan Wake is holding the flashlight like harder, he's going ooh, like really squeezing that thing for all it's worth.
Is one of the late game upgrades you just get a Fresnel lens?
Pretty much.
I mean,
you just get bigger flashlights.
You get better flashlights, which I didn't notice anything better about them. But
they wear down resistance faster when you have a bigger flashlight.
I like that they were like, okay, we're gonna do the Luigi's Mansion mechanic.
Yes.
But it's a gun now.
Because this is the core mechanic of the game. This is what you will be spending 10 hours doing. You will shine a flashlight at a guy and wait for that guy's little circle to go from being really big around it to being really little around it until it flashes. And then at the point that he flashes, you can shoot the guy.
And then you have to shoot him a bunch.
You have to shoot him a bunch of times.
Bullet sponges.
Like a ton of gunshots to someone who is just a guy.
Right.
Yeah. Can I also point out that you're an out of shape? You can't outrun these things.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
even though the game wants you to at certain points.
Yeah, but they catch up to you so easily. So you have to deal with all of these never-ending bad guys constantly.
Alan Wake is so out of shape that you can hold the run button for conservatively like 4 seconds. And then he's too tired. He just starts to
that's
trot.
fine. I think that's perfect. That's normal, actually. That's an ordinary thing for a guy like me, like Alan. I mean,
no, sure. In real life, sure.
I'm making an Alan Wake sequel where he's a podcaster.
Nice.
Brian is running away from the bad guys.
My name is Brian Alford, and I'm a podcaster.
So, Jack, would you describe the core gameplay loop as fun? How would you describe it?
It's funny. Like I don't play these kinds of games that often, so I was like, I was a little unsure if it was just me being out of touch with this style or something. I was like, this was not fun to me. It was also spooky. I don't play spooky games. I play games with like the power fantasy.
Was this spooky to you?
Oh yeah, it was like jump scary. I don't. It was just very dark.
Okay, so jump scares. That's fair. Yeah.
I've played other horror games. I can't do jump scares in movies or in any other medium but video games, because in video games I can run away or I can kill the thing coming after me like actively. And somehow I'm just able to handle it better. But the actual horror mechanics of this game are so much better handled in games like Resident Evil. Like at first, for the first whole episode of this thing.
I'm sorry. I'm going to let you finish, but I have a real problem with that assertion. But go ahead.
The thing that backs me up on the Resident Evil stuff is the camp value. So for as scary as Resident Evil is, it is also just entirely camp. Even in the most serious version, it's camp. In Alan Wake, it is
it's like trying to be camp or something.
At first, that whole first episode, I'm like, maybe I was just in 2010. I was coming at this
let's
game.
lay this out. These are episodes, not chapters.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The whole story of Alan Wake is a book that is now real, like in that Will Ferrell movie, but it's episodes.
Much like all other good books. I love to open up my book to episode 3 and read it.
My name is Harold Crick. That's Will Ferrell's character's name in that movie. I like that movie.
The screenwriter of Stranger Than Fiction once said that fear is no.
Yeah, that's good. So I thought that like in 2010, I saw all these reviews saying that this was like the next step forward in video game.
Right.
Like, this was going to be like the next big narrative jump. So when
there's also big like technical stuff that's going on. You know, all the objects that are flying around all the time. You know, actual physics objects and the light and everything was pretty spectacular for that moment.
Right.
Although I think it also gets overstated.
Yeah, no, sure. But I mean, it was a game that I was like, this was going to be like the next big narrative jump forward. And that's why I didn't think the story was so good. And then when I started replaying it for the remaster, I was like, oh, maybe I was engaging with the game wrong. Maybe this is just high camp. Maybe this is just like a really campy, fun horror time. And then the next 5 episodes disproved that entirely.
Yeah, it takes itself too seriously to really be that. And I think the best way for us to really unpack that narrative is just going to be to start talking about it. So after we have this whole movement tutorial and we learn about the core gameplay loop, which again,
I learned about pushing the analog stick forward.
Yes.
Stephen King once wrote frustration. That's it. He stopped writing after that.
Now we hear something that we will be hearing a few times throughout this game, which is a voice saying, Alan, wake up. And Alan, wake, get it? And apparently the whole thing that we just experienced was just a nightmare, which we know it was a nightmare because he told us that.
He would not stop telling us it was a nightmare.
Alan is taking a vacation to the Pacific Northwest with his hot wife to fix his writer's block. He hasn't been able to write in 2 years. So we have a pretty extensive series of like walking simulator times. Alan takes the ferry into town. He meets a local radio host. We go to a diner.
In the exact same diner from Twin Peaks.
Absolutely. It's the diner from Twin Peaks.
Everyone knows who Alan Wake is.
Yep.
Like
there's a cardboard standout of him.
There's a cardboard cutout of Alan. Yes.
Within this diner, we meet basically our other dramatis personae, or at least many of them. We've got Rose, who's a waitress. We've got the Anderson brothers. They're in a band.
Tor and Odin.
Yes. We've got Cynthia Weaver, who is just the log lady from Twin Peaks, except she carries a lantern rather than a log.
She's the lamp lady.
We also get a woman who's creepy, who we come across. Spooky, creepy, dark lady. She's shrouded in black. Oh, no. Alan and his wife get keys to a cabin from this lady, but it turns out they got keys to the wrong cabin. Oh, no.
They got to this diner because they were supposed to meet specifically a guy there.
Carl Stuckey.
Instead of waiting for this person, he takes it on himself to go look for him in the bathroom, which is a strange decision in and of itself. And then this woman accosts him in the dark and then says, no, I have a key for you. Which is also, like, you would think, because everyone clearly knows him, that's been established, that he would not just take a key from a complete stranger, because...
Yeah, it's just this random lady.
He is the most important man in the universe.
It's not like he's, like, an anonymous person. He's like, oh, she knows my name. Clearly, like, Stuckey, like, everyone knows his name. Like,
and he's like, here I am on my normal vacation, trying to meet a guy named Carl Stuckey, and then a Victorian widow has just walked up to me and handed me a key while speaking in poetic verse.
Right.
While another lady outside of the bathroom, or like by the bathrooms, is screaming, "Don't go in there! It's dark!"
as there's a cardboard cutout of myself by the front door.
Yeah,
It's
it's
also
just
like you should
facing
probably not
inward.
go back there.
My mother told me if you ever meet a Victorian widow, always take her keys.
yeah, this is just super duper normal stuff that a normal guy would do normal things with.
Well, the game did disarm me by asking me to play Harry Nilsson. Was that song that the
Oh,
tour?
Lime in the Coconut?
Yeah, Nilsson Schmilsson.
After Alan takes the key from the spooky lady, they drive off and, Carl's here. Carl's like, hey, you forgot your key. Oh, no.
I hope I don't have to fight you later. And this was made by Remedy is a Finnish gaming company, and this game was written by a Finnish man named Sam Lake.
So Remedy made the first two
Max Payne
games. And of course, Max Payne, the original Max Payne, was just like, what if we did The Matrix, but it actually is a video game and not just a movie that feels like a video game? And they succeeded. And they got, they made a sequel. And then they got into this weird contract deal with Microsoft for years and years and years and years, from 2003 to 2010 when they finally released Alan Wake.
And Max Payne 2 was more of a noir. It was, and this is something that then Remedy has sort of made a cornerstone of the work that they do. I mean, they really, for a Finnish studio, sure do have an interesting obsession with American pop culture and American cinema specifically.
There's not a single green pig or angry bird. Well, there are a lot of Angry Birds, actually. I take that back.
Yeah, this game is at least 40% Angry Birds.
I feel like some of what's going on here, particularly when we see these scenes of classic Americana, we've got the diner, we've got the forests, we've got all this shit. It is an understanding of America that is strictly through the lens of popular culture. And I feel like the distance between what the thing really is and what their perception of the thing is part of what gives this game a sort of uncanny feeling. It sort of reminds me of Deadly Premonition, which is another game that is based on Twin Peaks that takes a look at it from a Japanese perspective. But these games, whereas Deadly Premonition is very aware, I think, of what it is in many ways, Alan Wake is not. It is not a self-aware game, in my opinion.
It's more like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, which is a Polish game, if I remember correctly. And it's set in Wisconsin, but you're surrounded by mountains.
Sure. Yeah, the famous mountains of Wisconsin.
So you're saying it's like a copy of a copy kind of thing. It's,
Yeah.
It's like a telephone that's one person too removed for it to actually kind of work.
Yeah, and it is funny because when you listen to the commentary, because there's a commentary track both on the original game and the remaster, I found out, that Sam Lake himself did. And the most prevalent thing that comes forward is that he grew up with a lot of American pop culture and was super into comic books and American TV and American movies. And this game specifically was based a lot, obviously, on Twin Peaks, but also on Lost. He was fascinated by everyone watching DVDs at the time
That's where we went wrong.
And he was like, well, that would make a perfect video game idea, right? You would end with a cliffhanger.
But they didn't release this episodically, though, right?
No, it just
was
came
released
as
all at
one
once,
game.
yeah.
So you would play it. So you play it through, and then it just says next, previously on Alan Wake. It's like, well, I just did that. I was sitting there.
Was that the idea? Was it going to be released as an episodic game initially?
It was going to be an open world.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. There's a version of this game, the original version of this game, that I think would have been actually really, really cool. But
no, I can't
they
imagine
ran out of time.
with the existing features they had, making it open world would have made it.
With these goddamn car driving mechanics? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yes. Oh, man. And we will get there.
Jesus.
But before we get there, we might as well go back into sort of now what is our first, they've taken off the training wheels and put you into an actual combat situation, right? It's spooky time. It's nighttime.
Yeah. So we're at this cabin on an island.
But who gave him directions there?
It's right? Because
How
no
did
one
he-
apparently this
etched
island
on the key, Jack.
Yeah, this island doesn't exist, but they're at this cabin there, and Alan helpfully tells us that it's a caldera because he doesn't know how to say caldera. And
I thought he was just mispronouncing cauldron.
no, it's a caldera, which I mean does mean cauldron.
Sure.
It's volcanic. Anyway, that's.
Caldera.
I'm from New Mexico. I know so much about geology because we don't have any plants.
That's right, Brian.
This now.
This is your average New Mexican.
Yeah, that is what they sound like. That's the classic New Mexico accent. I've
I
heard it
was
once.
just driving up to Santa Fe.
I remember this from Breaking Bad. They all talk like this.
AJ, take it.
Jesse, what the fuck are you talking about?
Make some math.
Note to self, average New Mexican man Commercial underlined 3 times.
Oh, am I going to get to record one of these?
But yeah, down at the lake at Cauldron Lake, they get to the cabin. Ellen's wife is afraid of the dark, we learn. And
that is her one character trait.
That is her literal one thing. And after a series of spooky events, she ends up falling into the lake.
A lake that Alan Wake describes as, and I quote, "The water was clear and dark. It looked very deep." This is a writer. This man is a professional writer.
There's a point where they apprehend him a little bit later on, and one guy says, whatever, "Shut up, Dan Brown." And I was like, actually, yes. Yeah.
That FBI guy
That
just
fucking guy who just keeps naming
Also,
authors.
he calls him
Agent
H.P.
Nightingale.
Lovecraft, and I thought he said H.P. Lovecraft, and I thought, oh, that's funny.
yeah, that's
and then
a
I
good
realized,
one.
No, he's like, he just
Okay,
said
James Joyce. And I was like, oh, you wish.
So
I wish.
after Alan falls into the lake, more like Alan Lake,
Hey,
he
that's-
then wakes up again, and it's time to walk through the woods, folks. It's time to do the thing that this game is known for.
Let's tiptoe through the tulips.
Well, real quick point. I just want to also say that the reason that his wife fell into the lake, they had an argument because she had brought him there under ulterior motives.
Right,
correct?
false pretenses.
He found out
That's
that
right.
she wants him to go to a psychiatrist there.
Right.
Which does
Dr.
play letters.
Hartman, yes.
Right.
And he gets pissed off and starts to storm out, but then the lights
And
go
she
out.
also and she wants him to write more, and he just doesn't want to write
Right.
more.
Which is so shitty.
Yeah. Like he just wants to play because before that he's been all work.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what
Do you
happens?
want him to be a dull boy?
I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. So Alan walks through the woods for, I don't know, odd reasons. And he then comes across Stucky, the guy from before, the guy who had the keys to the correct cabin, but something's a little bit different about him. Oh.
Is it like how they named a guy Maine because of the Stephen King state? Like, does Stephen King ever talk about Stuckies at some point?
Not
Even
to
though
my
that's not
knowledge,
in
no.
New England? Yeah, okay.
No. None
It's
of
just
these.
like, here's an American thing, Stuckies.
Yeah.
I'm James Piggly Wiggly.
I think the only connection I could really draw to King's work is the fact that it is a writer who the game tries to convince you at multiple times is just alone on an island with his wife going crazy, and that he may have murdered her.
Yeah,
And-
I think The Shining is the only thing that even comes kind of close to the storyline. I mean, King doesn't really have any like cabin in the woods kind of stories that I could, not even like short stories. I can think of.
Isn't Dreamcatcher
Okay, that's a fair one, but that's like aliens, and that's a whole different bag
You know
of
who
bones.
loves Dreamcatcher? My mother. My mom loves Dreamcatcher with such a passion. She was reading it and she came up and I asked her how the book was and she said, "Oh, Stephen King's so great. There's a moment," and she leaned in conspiratorially and said, "There's a moment where the aliens get inside their bodies through their assholes." And she laughed hysterically. And I was like, I guess I should probably read a Stephen King novel.
Glad you're having fun, Mom.
Absolutely.
Because you know who wasn't having fun? Me while playing Alan Wake.
That's right.
So we're in the woods.
Yes, we're in the woods. Stucky is now looking a little different. Something strange is going on with him, and he seems to be enshrouded in the same sort of darkness that the hitchhiker was shrouded in earlier. So there's like a sort of boss fight with him in the lumberyard, and then we keep walking in the fucking woods, and eventually we get to a gas station. And at the gas station, we learn that A, it's been a week since the events that just happened where he blacked out, and B,
For some reason,
reason,
it's been a week.
and B,
It's been a week and the cabin doesn't exist.
the cabin doesn't exist. Oh, it's never existed. It's been gone since the fucking 70s or some shit.
It was man.
And we know it's been a week because there's like a festival coming up, right?
Right,
It's
Deer
like the
Fest.
Deer Fest, yeah.
Yeah.
Broken Lizards Deer
Yeah,
Fest.
So, Jack, at this point, curious to hear sort of, once you got through episode 1, where was your head at? Were you just excited to have a rip-roaring good time with Alan Wake or what?
I was like, I have to go through. The first thing I did at this point was Google how many episodes were in this game. And I was like, all right, how? And I was like, Jesus, 6 of them, and then 2 more with the DLC. So I was like, all right, kind of buckled in. But I feel like at this point too was the first time I saw the what was it, Night Springs? Was that the TV show? That was my favorite part of this whole game.
Oh, that
Actually,
was the
mine
Twilight
too.
Zone show?
Wow, I really didn't like it at all.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really? I thought they were fun.
One, I had a problem with the fact that either they had a camera running or they had the sound running, but like they never, like none of it was synchronized.
Oh, yeah,
all of
no.
the voices were dubbed after the fact.
Yeah.
I think they were a lot more successful with the FMV stuff in Control with the little like children's
Oh, those are
puppet
great,
show
too.
where
This-
they talk about that's fantastic. But this was just made me, as I spent a lot of 2020 playing FMV games, this one really what made me want to tear my fucking hair out. And did you see the QR codes
I
that
sure
they added
did.
for this?
I was gonna ask. Okay, cool.
Those are brand new. Like if you go to the YouTube videos that they lead to, they were posted last year or something.
And they
yeah.
add nothing to the game whatsoever.
So that's the thing, right? Is that I played the original. So
You had the
I
advertisements.
Right.
I had the ads. So basically,
Oh, there were real ads.
yes. So I played the PC version and just, fired it up. And to be honest, the remaster doesn't really look that much better than just playing the PC original in 4K.
It really doesn't.
But I played through it, and it's actually kind of delightful in a weird way that there are multiple Verizon ads. So like whenever Alan Wake pulls out his cell phone, you see the Verizon logo on it. There's a couple Verizon billboards around town, and then all of the batteries have the Energizer logo on them. So
Wow.
it's like this really weird product placement thing that feels out of place, but also somehow escalates the camp value, which I know was not what they were aiming for,
Yeah.
which is just
No,
kind of
no,
a
no.
funny dynamic.
They were trying to make it more realistic.
Right.
And they do make a reference to the Verizon sponsorship in the DLC explicitly when Mr. Scratch, who is Alan Wake's evil self,
Doppelganger.
Yes,
It's
yes.
another Twin Peaks total reference.
says, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?"
Oh, God.
Good.
They have the largest 5G coverage in America.
So yeah, that's the end of episode 1, and we move our way into episode 2 with a flashback.
We're in the apartment in New York
Whoa,
City.
hey, look at that. New York.
New York. And we learn a little bit more about his writing career as well, that Alan Wake is not a horror writer like Stephen King, but he idolizes Stephen King. It's also crazy to me that Alan Wake and Stephen King exist in the same universe, like Stephen King exists within the
Yeah,
Alan Wake
it's-
universe,
oh, God
which means
damn.
Stephen King is also in the Control universe, which also, anyway, you find out that he's actually a writer of like a gritty cop drama. So
Right.
it's basically like if you gave James Patterson a gun, or like
Yeah,
Dean
it's like a Jack
Koontz a
Reacher kind
gun.
of story, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
Now I'm gonna go kill Dean Koontz
Or like if
for
you-
the last time.
so he's created a character that's kind of like a Bosch, like a Hieronymus Bosch character from
I
the
thought you were
hit
talking about
Amazon
me.
Uh,
show Bosch. No, not you. No, Bosch.
But it's also not unlike
the
Bosch,
Titus
which
Welliver
is
hit that ran for 6 seasons on Amazon.
Yeah, no, I got it. Bosch is like the kind of the chaotic version of me, though. So like I feel a connection to this as well. You've got
What is so weird is both my mom and my dad have separately started watching Bosch now that they're divorced. And I have to wonder, had they started watching that show 6 months ago, if my parents would still be together.
I don't think you can.
It's not true. That wouldn't.
I don't think you can appreciate Bosch until you're divorced.
Oh,
It
yeah.
has a very divorced energy to it.
I've never
Yeah.
seen it.
I watched
But
the
they both
pilot
separately
episode.
were like, have you heard of this Bosch show? I was like, how are you both?
It's like Ray Donovan, right? You can't be married and also like it.
That's true. That's true. How many times do you think that he says the N-word in the pilot, Ray Donovan? Because guess what? It's more than one.
oh boy,
Yeah.
Well, that's why they got John Voight.
yeah,
That's true.
Yeah,
Turns out
honestly,
he's not
though.
even the one who says it. It's great. He does. There was a point where John Voight is on an airplane and he looks over to his right and a woman's breastfeeding and he gives her like eyebrows and like eyes the boob and then she like has to kind of hide it away and he's like, yeah, titties.
This sounds like a great TV show, almost as great as this game. The big story thing that we learn from being back in Alan's apartment is that he has this little light switch that's like a detached light switch called the clicker. Apparently
Yes.
his own mom gave him this as a kid when he was afraid of the dark, because the idea is, don't worry, like you can just click this and it's going to make all the bad guys in the dark go away. And he gives it to his wife so that she's not afraid of the dark anymore.
And it's supposed to be like a very sweet moment, but it's acted as with like basically Ken doll like animatronics to it, so it's just deeply weird and unsettling. And then we cut back to the present day with Alan Wake in a gas station.
Yes.
Surrounded by the cops, right? This is the point where
this is where you meet the sheriff.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've met the sheriff at the very tail end of the first episode, but really what we're learning here is that Alan is being sort of interrogated to make sure he's still within his right mind. A few things happen here. First of all, he gets a phone call from a fucking kidnapper who says that he has his wife.
Yeah, he's like, stop talking to the police. Come out back and you'll find out that we're for real this time.
That's right.
average New Mexico man. How did you get on my phone?
Emil Hartman, who again is the doctor, the psychiatrist or whatever, comes by and again invites Alan to go to the clinic. So Alan punches him for some reason. That was cool.
He's very angry. He's a very complicated character.
Right in front of the receptionist whose voice they cast to sound just like Lucy from Twin Peaks.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Except with none of Lucy's personality or like endearing.
No.
Like I think we maybe spend like 5 seconds with her at like
she
most.
she does cartoons, so I just wondered if they had gotten the actress who played Lucy. They did not.
The voice actor who plays Alan Wake was actually in the original cast of Passion,
The musical? The Sondheim musical?
the Sondheim musical. He played Ladovic.
Well, how about that? Good for him.
Yeah.
We love to see Broadway actors succeed. And hey, folks, here's the important thing. Stephen King once wrote that Broadway is back.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot going on here.
And here's the thing, folks. Broadway is back.
It is.
Yeah. So we leave the police station.
Yes.
They allow him to leave.
Well, because his friend Barry comes along. His
agent.
Barry.
Yeah.
His agent
Hey,
who
man.
just showed up right
Hi,
right as he
Barry.
punched a doctor.
Oh, hi,
In
As he
the
Barry.
punched an
most-
elderly doctor.
The most confusing outfit I've ever seen.
Describe this outfit for me, Jack.
Cargo
please.
shorts, a bright orange puffer jacket, and I think a Hawaiian button-up shirt underneath that,
Yeah.
and hiking boots.
Yeah. He's
Yes.
a modern fashion icon.
Jack, tell me something about Barry. What do you think of this guy? What is how does this guy strike you?
I think that they walked a very delicate line. It's subtle. But there is a slight homage, I would say almost a pastiche, to what one might describe as like a typical, and when I say typical, I mean cliche, person who is an agent. How do I describe it? It's just so it's very delicate how they handle
Yeah.
this.
It's very ethnic.
Yeah, that's the term.
In the 50s, they would cast a Greek man in this role.
Yes. And it's really weird too, because like the character of Barry is actually going to become a big part of the movement of the plot. And we're supposed to like him. Like we're really supposed to like him. We're supposed to care a lot about whether he lives or dies. And you just don't.
I have never hated a video game character with quite the passion that I hate Barry. Every choice that they made to make him endearing backfired horrifically, and I don't necessarily even blame the voice actor so much. It was just like there was nothing there. I mean, with all these characters, there's no there, right? Like Alan Wake has no personality other than that he is a writer. And that he is an alcoholic.
I'm a writer.
And the alcoholic and the rage stuff actually doesn't really come into the DLC anyway in any like meaningful way.
Sure.
So
He's mostly just a coffee drinker.
yeah, he mostly
Damn good
you just-
cup of coffee.
You got to find these giant ass thermoses just scattered around.
What do the since I didn't play the game,
Fucking
I just watched the
thermoses.
playthrough. What does the thermos do?
Nothing,
It's just a collectible for people who like
Wait,
collectibles,
why are you grabbing
Nothing.
thermoses then?
because
And
you
I had
want
to
to be
Google it halfway through
awake.
because it's like
I think it's like the Donkey Kong Country thing, right? It's like just you collect
just to
them all.
grab them.
Yeah, and if you drink enough
Wait,
coffee,
is
you will
that
be
seriously
Donkey Kong
it?
64,
It's just
I mean.
like, what the fuck?
It's to populate
Easter egg, I
their
guess? Yeah.
woods with things to do
Yeah, I
besides
think it's
find
just
caches.
to make you like explore their faux open world.
And speaking of things to do
find
in the
the
woods, what ends up happening next is that
gets sucked off.
Ellen meets Ranger Rusty. Rusty is a park ranger. He's out there in the woods, and then Alan has to walk through some more woods again, and finds Rusty again after. Like you just like walk in a big circle and you come back, and this time Rusty.
He's dark-sided.
Yeah, he's a little dark-sided now, and it doesn't take long.
And now he like shouts like instructional slogans at you
Right.
while swinging an axe.
And that's another thing that this game does is that the Taken, as they call them, these are the zombies. They will say things that they would have said while they were still alive. I guess it's like all they can do is say things like, "You need to have more omega-3 fatty acids in your diet," and
Hunting can save you money on food.
it's like
That-
what?
It weirdly worked for me, that part. I don't know
Really?
why. I thought that was effective.
I actually think
It
it's
was
not a
just
bad
so
idea.
fucking out there, and they like went for it. I was like, okay, cool. This is
Jack, I agree with you. I think it's a
appreciated
very interesting idea. I just think that what they did with the voice modulation completely robbed it of any fear for me. It just became...
it wasn't scary for sure, but I found it just kind of like compelling.
Well, I feel like you can take something like that in one of two directions, right? You can either go kind of silly and camp with this and like go in that direction, or you can go in a direction where this is sort of the eerie, like last echoes of their conscious thoughts.
It's like annihilation.
And that's where you have to pull it back to very casual energy, right? You can't be talking like this.
Right.
Which I think is where, like, not having read much of Stephen King, but that's where a lot of his writing works, is that like it's plain spoken.
Right.
And that's where it starts to get under your skin. And I think Control does this a lot better with stuff like The Motel or the Bakelite telephone. Because they decided to just read a bunch of creepypastas for 10 years. And then we're like, oh,
it's
this
all
is
like
how
SCP
that dynamic
shit.
works. Yeah.
Right. I mean, another book that I've read that sort of does that dynamic of like turning the mundane into the horrifying is Severance, which I don't know if you guys have read it, but it's about a girl who wakes up one day, and this was published right before the pandemic, so it became a big bestseller during the pandemic. But it's that these people, everybody who gets this virus, their conscious brain decays, leaving them only with the part of their brain that does menial repetitive tasks. And so you'll just see these people who are not able to do anything other than like continue to walk or continue to put on makeup or continue to do whatever. And they look horribly disfigured because they are not consciously aware of what they're doing, but they're continuing the motor movement. That is cool. And I think that's kind of, to your point, Jack, what they were maybe aiming for here. Like that's what they wanted to do.
It feels like it's almost a thing where like horror doesn't typically work on stage because like it's hard to get the audience to focus on the correct thing because like your eyes can wander. With a video game, you can like look around so much more than there's no fixed point of view.
Right. Which is also why like the original Resident Evil games used a fixed camera angle so that you can get those scares.
Oh no, it doesn't. So it falls into goofy where I think that they meant to be horrifying. Yeah. With that voice modulation and all these things, and it just doesn't quite hit the mark.
Right.
Because what they want is they want it to be Jack Nicholson shouting, "Here's Johnny," when he chops down the door. To the point where they even say, "I was worried he was gonna chop through the door, just like Jack Nicholson in The Shining."
Yep. They do make
like,
a lot
we
of...
get it. We know that's what you're doing right now.
But it does kind of feel like the whole script has the Heavy Rain translation thing happening. It feels like all the lines have been heavily translated into
from
English.
The Finnish,
from Finnish.
Which is not the... I'm sure. I think they must have actually written it in English.
No, it was written in English. Sam Lake in the commentary talks about how he took a lot of plot elements for Alan Wake from a screenplay that he wrote while at university called Undertow. The commentary isn't particularly revealing other than you kind of find out that the man is very by the books, like he's a Joseph Campbell, like Die Hard. This is how you structure a 3-act thing. But his background is in screenplays. And I think the main problem with Alan Wake is that it is a screenplay that's a TV show.
Yes.
Like
Absolutely.
It can't really sustain itself for 6 whole episodes.
It's Wayward Pines.
Yeah. So you end up walking back and forth in the woods.
Right.
Yeah, you do one whole loop
6
around
of the 10
Lover's
hours.
fucking Peak in this episode 2.
Right.
And also episode 2 introduces the driving mechanics.
Oh boy, yeah. That piece happens right after you fight Rusty. Rusty turns, you have to fight Rusty, you eliminate Rusty, and then you have to walk and drive through some more woods. This was the part of the game where I started throwing my controller across the room. There are some level design choices that are made in this part of this episode that are so bad and so aggressively anti a good gameplay experience that I had to stop playing at multiple points. There's one point where there's like this arc that you have to go through, and you have to basically, the only way to really do it is to run past all of the guys. But as we've already mentioned, you run out of energy after 4 seconds. And so you can't really make it through, meaning that you have to like be constantly sweeping around with your field of vision. You also don't have flares yet, so you don't have the ability to like do area damage. So
get you some room.
You're just in this situation where you're fucking stuck because you can't really run past them. You don't have the weaponry necessary to take them on directly. And it's designed like the game hates you. That's really the only way I can put it.
Yeah, there's a bit where every time an enemy spawns, the camera will like go like super slow-mo and show you the direction that the enemy is coming from, and then spawn 4 enemies behind you.
Jack, the size of your eye roll just now. I
Because
feel like
here's the thing, you're while they show that cinematic of the enemy spawning, the game is still, it's not paused.
Right.
So if you're being attacked while that happens, you still are getting your ass kicked just over on the left side. Like, it's so frustrating. It's like, there's a weird sound effect, and like, it's like, oh, wait, cool, I'm going to die right now.
And it's always the exact same musical sting under it every time, too. There's like 2 songs in this game.
Because I'm just curious, what difficulty did we all play this on?
Oh,
I just
very
went
interesting.
normal.
I went normal because you can, on the PC version, you can only do normal or hard.
I played normal and nightmare. There's a couple of differences. I think we haven't mentioned a mechanic of the game that is actually incredibly important are the manuscript pages, which appear throughout the game.
Where this came in.
It happens like midway through episode 1, after you awaken in the nightmare world. But there are little pieces of paper that are like little bits of the story that Alan Wake was writing that also happen to be coming true in the world around him. So you'll usually get like a clue as to what's coming up, like down the line, or like, you know, some little like insight into a character that you would normally get. But the problem is this entirely breaks the logic of the game, because Alan Wake is getting information about things that'll happen in the future and is still very surprised when those things happen in the real life. Like it makes Alan into a complete idiot in a way that I don't think the game thinks that he is a complete idiot. But so in nightmare mode, there are certain manuscript pages that you can get that you can't get in normal mode. So you have to play the game twice in order to get all of the manuscripts, or just start on nightmare mode, which is impossible. And also, it takes enemies longer for their darkness to leave them, for the light to like break their darkness, and they also take more bullets. So to put down a standard enemy in nightmare mode takes 4 pistol bullets, where in the original it takes 2. So that's where the resource management comes in. It's actually the same amount of resources, I think. It's just you need more to take down a single taken.
Sure.
Interesting.
With the way that resource distribution works, it's very rare that, at least once you get flares, it's very rare that you actually have to fight these big groups, unless it's like one of those sequences where you have to do it. But like with the normal like spawns, most of the time, once you have the ability to do area damage through flares, you can run away. That's and that's basically how most of the second half of the game goes. Anyway,
and
that's
the game
a balance
expects you
thing.
to.
But
like on the screen when you die, they have a little thing. It's like, hey, you can always run away, and I'm like, thanks. Maybe give me a run mechanic that works.
Right. There's also bear traps that you can step in and you're fucked, so don't step in the bear traps. Also, you can't use bear traps to deal damage to enemies, which is too bad because that would actually be fun. But this game doesn't want you to have fun. You meet the kidnapper, the guy who kidnapped your wife, and it's off to Lover's Peak for just... Who doesn't love a fucking escort mission? Am I right, guys?
Yeah.
The thing that everybody loves in video games. An escort mission where you have no gun.
But he seems aware that he is in the story. Like, he knows that he is in the story written by Alan Wake, which is, and you know, he demands that Alan turn over the rest of the manuscript.
Right. Yes, that's his desire. Is he will trade his wife for the manuscript.
A couple other things that end up happening then after this horrible backwards escort mission. We go back to Alan goes back to the cabin to save Barry, because Barry is now surrounded by birds the birds are evil. This is Hitchcock's The Birds.
And to get back to the cabin, you have to get in a car. Now, Jack, you had mentioned the driving mechanics earlier. Can you explain to us exactly why you hate them so much?
Just for our listeners, by the way, Jack is currently doing the biggest facepalm I've maybe ever seen.
The really frustrating thing to me was I couldn't put my finger on what was so horrendous about it. Like, I play inverted and I was like, oh, maybe my controls are de-inverted, so I kept like switching them, but like I just couldn't control the car. I thought I was going insane. I thought I was having a stroke. It just would not do what any normal car mechanic, like, it's not new.
Right. Right.
It's so basic.
The joystick configuration is like you have a teeny tiny dead zone, and then you have a little bit where you can actually make the car turn. And if you turn it any more than that, the joystick, even any further off axis, all of a sudden your car is just like doing a 90-degree plus, and you're fully out of control, and you've driven into a wall or a fence.
Or a tree. or a Taken who then can axe your car to the point where the car does not explode, but Alan Wake just kind of gets out of the car.
Yes! Oh my God. Alan just randomly will get
Well, he
out
has
of
to
the car.
exchange information.
Exactly. Yeah. It needs to make sure
I'm
that.
so sorry. Here's my card. I'm with USAA.
Oh my God. Did you have that happen to you, Jack, where Alan would just decide to randomly get out of the car and hang out and be surrounded by a group of Taken?
Yes, because I was driving, and then the first thing I noticed was that there were like many more clearly drivable cars as I was passing. I was like, why would they offer me more cars? I don't need, because I thought it was just, I wasn't killing the Taken. I was like, why would I fight these things? There's no benefit for it. And then I went off axis. I swerved into a ditch and was surrounded by 800 of these guys.
Right.
They started axing the car. I got out for some reason and then had to sprint.
Right. You didn't get out. Alan got out whether you wanted him to get out or not.
Yeah, and the last words you heard before sweet death was Nordic walking can improve your circulation.
Yep. I'm glad that is a real thing, because I was convinced that I was going insane. I was like, I didn't push the button to get out of the car. I know that I didn't. So no, that's just the game.
The game will also, there's a couple of later levels where you have to do like a roller derby against other like possessed cars.
Oh my God, that shit.
Yeah, this might just be in the DLC, but
I did not.
It's episode 6.
So is that, so they just did Maximum Overdrive?
Yes.
Pretty much.
That movie that Stephen King was so high when he directed, he doesn't even remember making it.
Yeah, no, so they do that, except, so the whole point is that you're supposed to like be ramming these cars, right? And like using your headlights to like destroy the energy around it. But the problem is that if you ram them too hard, you just get out of the car and then the car runs you over.
Right.
So in the original design, there was a day and night cycle. And during the day, you would explore the town of Bright Falls. You get to know all the NPCs there and learn about their lives and help them solve problems. And also everything that you learned during the day would help you at night when, the Taken would swarm the town. It was more like a tower defense game from what I understand. At the end of Alan Wake, they do like this end credit sequence where it makes it very clear that you are like supposed to care about the citizens of Bright Falls.
Right.
And I didn't really know the citizens of Bright Falls.
Right, because you spend your whole fucking time walking through the woods.
Yeah, through the outskirts of town. And it's sad because I actually think the town design is pretty cool, and that level where you get to fight through it is pretty nice. But no, most of the time we're in these fucking woods, which is where we end up at the end of episode 2.
We sure do. We're going to a coal mine. The waitress from before lets us know that on a phone call that she has the manuscript pages. But wait, no, it's not really her. She's being controlled by the lady in black.
And she's speaking like so clearly, robotically, and differently that Alan Wake is an idiot, right? Can we just...
It's one of my least favorite things when people are like bad liars and no one acknowledges it. Like, it would have been a much cooler reveal if she had tricked us as players and just acted normally and then had a gotcha moment. But no, I don't know why they needed to wink at the camera like that.
I have your manuscript. Please come over. My only guess is that...
I'll be happy to take that manuscript. Thank you.
my only guess is that the voice acting was so bad in the game that they didn't think anyone would notice. Because it's funny, because when Sarah gets hypnotized, the deputy, a little bit later on, her voice does not change. And so you, as Alan, go to the trailer park
with Barry.
Where the waitress lives with
and
Barry.
This is the beginning of episode 3, by the way, that we're in now. Ransom. Episode 3, Ransom.
Where you have to do what is probably the longest walk in video game history, listening to Barry exposit at you until you can get the owner of the trailer park to unlock a gate.
And then he takes a really long time to walk too. Like, you're getting exposition coming and going. You're getting exposition from Barry. You're getting exposition from Paul, who's the guy who runs the trailer park. It's nuts.
Well, you have to walk around a boat because a boat has fallen into the trailer park home.
Yeah, because the sky, because this is the point where the Dark Presence, which is the big bad of the whole game, is like starting to throw shit around, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's like the first sign of like...
It's a sneak peek of what's coming, yeah.
Yeah, where you have to dodge boats in real time, which... when the run button is the same as the dodge button in the game, you've designed it really well.
I mean, it works for Dark Souls.
So anyway, you're in this trailer park, and oh boy, the waitress sure does poison you.
Serves you a cup of knockout coffee, classic cup of coffee, and
I like that she uses her profession as a waitress to like waitress you to death.
yes,
That's really good.
yes.
Application of her skills.
And you don't pass out before Barry says, "This coffee's almost as good as the coffee in New York."
Yeah. I love
and then
that.
he passes out almost immediately
I
afterwards.
just love that you take a drink from this person who is clearly possessed.
Yeah, like,
You can even see the like black, like there's a thing that they all have where, you know,
It's
there's
like a
like this
presence around
black,
them.
like,
Yes, like an
aura. And it's like, you can see it. Ellen, you know
Ellen.
what these people look like at this point when they have the when they're taken, you know.
You've killed 150 of
with
these
your
so
flashlight
far.
and your gun, Ellen. What are you doing?
I like coffee.
was that?
I collect thermoses. I have 52 of them. You want to see?
I only would need 48 more thermoses to get all 100.
They're all just hanging from his belt.
Once I have 100 thermoses, I can finish my terrible novel.
I get an award from Xbox.
But while he's knocked out, he has this dream of what appears to be a Big Daddy from BioShock.
Yeah.
And then we get the guy who we've been talking about a little bit here and there, Special Agent Nightingale, which again, special FBI agent. You can see what they're doing here. Twin Peaks reference, anybody? This is my least favorite character in the entire game.
He makes no sense.
It genuinely it does not. Even later, you find the hotel room that he was staying at, and it like illuminates nothing about the man's personality.
Okay, I didn't miss it. It's never explained what his drive is, right? Like,
No, you get manuscript pages that try to, but like, no, he's just a drunk and an asshole.
Jack, his goal, his objective is to name as many authors as possible.
It's almost like he has a bet with the rest of like the police force in Bright Falls to like see how many names he could sneak in without anybody noticing. And it's like, did anyone keep a running tally of their favorite name? Like, what was their favorite insult?
None of them are insults. It's just names of
he's just
authors.
saying authors. There's nothing clever to it.
Yeah, no, there's no pun.
Now you stop right there, Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Every time that you see Agent Nightingale throughout this game, he's going to give Ellen a different name of a different author. And also, every time he shows up, Ellen is going to run away and jump into something. That's the other thing that remains constant in all of these interactions. Whether Ellen is jumping off of a mountainside cliff, jumping into a lake, jumping in some way, shape, or form, he loves to run away and then jump. That's kind of his whole thing. Guess what's next after this interaction?
Is it the ones?
It's walking through the woods, dude. Like,
First it's running through the woods.
Yeah, that's
from
true.
the special agent who's
been-
trying to murder you without cause.
right.
I've been missing the woods so far. I'm so glad we're finally back to the woods.
Yeah, it's like a nice little comfort place. And it's not so much running through the woods as run, trot, 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 run, trot, 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 run, trot, trot, over and over.
You actually
and
missed
over
one
again.
important part,
Wind
AJ.
sprints.
It's run, trot, 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 pant, 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 recover
he
stamina,
pants so loud.
run, trot. Yeah, it's
If he had a stamina meter, I could at least like know how long before he just completely gives out, so I could plan a bit better. But it's all kept from you.
or you could communicate it through other ways. It could be a stamina meter. It could be that the way that his run cycle looks changes. Like there's other ways you could do it, but instead you just have this binary state where he's either full of energy or exhausted and nowhere in between.
And it's like a wall. Like you just hit a wall and you're done. It was at this point that I felt like Taylor Swift and that I just kept asking, are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods yet? Are we out of the woods?
And we are not.
And we are not. We are in the woods.
Imagine how those level designers must have felt. What are we doing today? Oh, it's more woods on the side of a mountain.
But
This one has a plane.
They did spice this one up with my second least favorite mechanic, which is walking across these fucking bridges as random shit flies at you.
Not content to simply have guys who run directly at you at very high speeds, the game also then decides to start throwing objects at you that are almost impossible to dodge.
So you just get hit.
My blood pressure was so high. I really can't even articulate. It took me, I think, 10 tries to get across that fucking bridge. I was like, okay, maybe I have to like focus on. I tried so many different tactics. Like I have to maybe just focus on one of these things and like burn it out, and then like 8 other things hit you from the other side.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, maybe you just have to like run through it as quickly as possible. But no, then you just die again. That was fucking hard. It wasn't fun.
So the thing about episode 3 is that it's bad. There's nothing really defining about it. You do go through a mine at one point, and in order to get there, they don't give you a car, and they just make you run across a large expanse of terrain.
Mm-hmm.
This was because there's one point at the very beginning, like you've escaped from Special Agent Nightingale, and you climb a fire watchtower. And he's like, I can see in the distance where I'm going. And I'm like, I was like, okay, surely I'll walk a little ways and then it'll cut to, some kind of like clip scene and then but no, you walk the entire, it's like miles.
Yeah.
It's miles.
And there's not a car there, right? There isn't a car that you can get. You have to walk the whole thing.
Is at the very end, Alan falls into a lake.
Yeah,
he
and then
falls into the lake at that the cabin was on.
And then that Big Daddy from before saves him from drowning. He is in this moment a little sister.
So the cliffhanger, because this game was actually inspired a lot by Lost. They wanted to like incorporate like a cliffhanger at the end of this episode to get you coming back for the game you've already purchased and the episode you can immediately play. So you fall into the lake and a hand reaches down to pull you out of the lake. And who does that hand belong to? Why, it's none other than Dr. Hartman. And we will find out what Dr. Hartman's intentions for Alan Wake are when we come back from this commercial break. Aren't you excited?
Well, howdy, listeners. It's me, your average New Mexico man. Do you like the Southwest? Do you like your heat dry? Do you like chilies and wish they were in every food? Well, then you should also become an average New Mexico man. Enjoy all the perks of New Mexico, from its great red mesas to its vast sea of white gypsum sands. New Mexico is the perfect place to live. If you love answering questions about the hit AMC show Breaking Bad, did you know Bryan Cranston got that pizza on the roof in one take? Well, prepare to hear about it forever. So become an average New Mexico man today, so you too can drive on fractured remnants of Route 66 on your way to your job at the unmarked industrial complex, surrounded by nothing for miles. But when the time comes to turn onto the dirt road, you'll go right instead, taking the on-ramp to I-40. You'll just keep driving. You don't know why. Just that your foot has become lead and the speedometer keeps ticking up, and you'll drive and drive, swerving in and out of traffic. Today will be the day you think. Today will be the day you escape. And as you see the Welcome to Texas sign getting ever closer, tears will start pouring down your face. You've always been an average New Mexico man. Maybe now you'll be something more. An average multi-state person. But as you cross the threshold into Texas, your body will start convulsing. Your very being will start to unravel, come undone, split, until your old body will lie there like a cocoon left behind by a butterfly. And in your place will be an average Texas man. You stupid man. You thought you could be in 2 states at once. But you will only ever be one thing. So come marvel at the beauty of the natural world and keep an unconcealed firearm on you at all times, because you don't need a license to do so. An average New Mexico man. What are you gonna do? Live in Arizona?
So in all of this discussion, I've just gotten an ad saying that the USDA Forest Service is hiring.
Oh,
Well,
So
you're going into Foreston?
so I heard you like walking through the woods a bunch. My great grandpa worked for the Forest Service in Louisiana back in the
shit.
day.
I mean, working for the Forest Service these days would be an interesting way to like see the end of the world as it happens, I guess.
Speaking of the end of the world, let's start talking about Alan Wake.
Now we're being pulled out of a lake.
That's
We are
right.
being
I mean,
pulled out
it's
of the
like
lake.
if you're gonna set a whole game in the woods, that's fine, but like make it cool.
Yeah.
Make
Alan
it cool
Wake.
to be in the woods. Like Control, for the most part, the level feels, it's all brutalist office, but it works. They make that work.
Part of it, I think, has to do with imagination, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that in Control, you are in this like kind of otherworldly environment that is what you imagine Langley to feel like. I mean, I'm sure that in real life, it's not anywhere near that interesting, even in like the Prime world or whatever. But
Right.
there's something about the way that the level design inspires the imagination, and that's not happening here. We're on chapter 4 now, The Truth, and we're in a basically a mental health clinic.
Yeah.
Which
I just want to issue a correction right here. Josh said chapter 4, and I want to be very clear.
fuck off.
This is episode 4.
Yes.
I also like
we are
that
in a
Jack, you were
launch.
like, yeah.
It's a
I
crucial
saw you-
distinction in this
Yes.
game about a writer.
So where we are now, right? Alan Wake's wife still gone.
Still gone.
Kidnapper doesn't have her.
Got her driver's license somehow.
Yeah, he's been finding manuscripts
Right.
that are all descriptive of things that he's actually experiencing.
Right.
So sometime in this week that he has forgotten, he wrote a whole book.
Alan Wake did, yes.
And yeah, who else
The
did I
kidnapper.
mention? Why would I? Yeah, Alan, but he's the.
But he,
Why would
but
the
Al-
kidnapper
but-
be writing a book? That doesn't make sense.
no,
AJ.
but-
He
no,
could
but
be
the
writing a
kidnapper-
book. He seemed like a
could be.
motivated
Maybe
guy.
he's a rival author. I don't know. I don't want to post.
Then why would he be
dreams.
looking for the manuscript from
Because
Alan?
he's jealous. He's jealous that Alan is such a better writer.
Okay, sure.
It's a head
This
of
is
gobbler
already a more
situation.
interesting game.
It's
This is
that would
already
be
an
so
infinitely more
much
interesting
better.
game.
But Alan has figured out that he wrote a book last week. It's been 1 week.
That's
And
Yep.
Since you
It's
looked
been
at me.
1 week since you looked at me. Got you into the side and said I'm
everything
angry.
that he wrote in the book has come true or is in the process of coming true.
I had entered this town, Odyssey. There was an old man standing behind the soda fountain. He made me a chocolate sundae. I said, thank you for the sundae. And he said, have you found the Lord? And I said, the what? Coming this summer. The crossover you never knew you needed.
Stephen Curtis Chapman is Alan Wake. And I mean, the fact that this is set in the Pacific Northwest and you're wandering around the forest a bunch, it's Frank Peretti. These Finns have never even heard of Frank Peretti, but they have accidentally made a Frank Peretti rough draft that forgot to put the Lord in somehow.
So we're in Dr. Hartman's clinic or his recovery facility, right? It's a cabin in the woods.
His vacation lodge.
The architecture, lovely.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty cool level.
I was delighted by the architecture of this place. Like, I would love to go here and actually spend some time writing.
recover, yeah.
They do interiors very well. And so for Control, they were like, it's just interior.
Yeah. So Dr. Hartman is saying some stuff that tips you to the fact that this is not a 100% real thing.
He starts talking about eating raw beef and the time he appeared on Rogan. And then he starts crying.
Right.
He just starts crying and then he has to pop a couple of benzos and then he's fine again. Yeah. The deep evil that Antifa. See, no, this is just.
It's all right.
No, it's bad. It's bad.
So,
it's bad. I'm cutting
A
it.
couple things that happen here.
I'm Dr. Jordan Peterson.
Damn it.
And I'm a psychiatrist. I got some more water so I can do the voice.
Thank you, Brian.
I've never hated water more.
You can just see me fucking losing my mind over here. So we meet then the Anderson brothers, or we re-meet them rather. We met them in the diner before, and you know they sound a little bit loony, but you know what? maybe they're the sanest people in this crazy old world when you really think about it.
Right?
Fuck. Tor's got a little toy hammer that he hammers on the table.
That's right.
And Odin has an eye patch.
The designers clearly had like an archetype in mind. They were going for something. It's just it's just 2 degrees off, and it makes such a difference.
Yes.
How uncanny it feels. How really just they're trying so hard. You can tell,
so
and they think that
close.
they're nailing it. You can tell that they think that they're nailing it.
That they're writing this very tense psychological thriller. And what you get instead is just a wet fart.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just so happy. The thing, my favorite thing about the Anderson brothers is like, I'm just so happy that they made a sequel to Shenandoah.
Jesus Christ.
You just hear John Cullum monologuing in the background.
There is something interesting about the Anderson brothers in that they do feel the most lived in, weirdly. Like, it's like this entire game is like it's an outsider's perspective on American culture.
Right.
And all of a sudden these two brothers come in who kind of feel like outliers. Do you know what I mean? Like Tor and Odin do not mix with like the Twin Peaks aesthetic. They are like hardcore punk rockers who,
and those are Nordic names, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels. I'm curious to hear though, Jack, like when you say that it was close but no cigar, and so it came away feeling rather uncanny. Like, what specifically in this situation are the details that gave you that feeling?
I just feel like there's a lot of good ideas here. Like, on paper, this would be a cool scene. You're a writer who's brought into this weird psychiatrist place. Your wife is missing. There's these 2 people who believe that they're Nordic gods. I'm like, oh man, this sounds really intriguing and cool. But then you actually play the thing and it just falls to pieces. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so much like the Taken's, like they're repeating these like bizarre phrases. Like, there's good ideas in there, but just layered in crap.
It feels like a reference to American Gods. Like it feels like they're trying to do what Neil Gaiman did, where it's like, you know, here are these ancient European or African gods that are just walking around
trying to live life.
Like just a slob, like one of us.
What if?
Part of what makes American Gods work as well as it does is that Neil Gaiman spent a lot of time in America and is writing very specifically from a perspective of someone who's been in it, but is not from there.
Yes.
Part of, you know, horror has to play off of like familiarity. And especially when you're trying to make your horror uncanny, where you need just enough familiarity for it to work and then know where to twist it.
Yeah.
It's like they don't know where to twist it. So then it just comes across as like a weird, like not a scary weird, just like, that's odd.
I was thinking to myself, like, oh, these are good ideas here. I'm like, well, of course they're good ideas. They've taken a lot of good ideas and just repurposed them.
Right.
And, you know, not just in an homage way and just kind of like this is more of a collage almost.
Yeah. And then they just say, and then it was just like that thing we referenced.
It's a real skin kaleidoscope of sorts.
Yeah. He was left bleeding by the side of the road, just like Carrie was bleeding at the beginning of the book, Carrie. And the movie by Brian De Palma, Carrie.
I saw a doll.
We made a reference.
I saw a small doll. It creeped me out. It reminded me of the doll Chucky. Unfortunately, this very interesting setup gets thrown away almost immediately.
Because the episode is called The Truth, right? And it frames it up that this is going to be like, oh, the truth of it was actually that this was all in Alan's head, and his wife died, and he went to a grief spiral and wrote a novel. And
Shutter Island.
Yeah, and really just like caved in on himself. And then, in fact, no, it's not true. There is a supernatural force, and the doctor's full of shit and tried to manipulate Alan for reasons.
Yeah, and it tips its hand in that direction a couple times too, right? Like there is the poster, and on the poster there's the guy who was the kidnapper from before, and it's like, oh, is he in on it? Are we all in on it? There's a tape that you come across where your wife is talking to the psychiatrist and being like, well, I'm just really worried about him. You know, he gets angry a lot of the time, and I really would love for you to help him.
It just felt so out of nowhere to like learn that the character I'm playing is this. I feel like they should have been established that they had these problems. Like, I was like, oh, we had these, like, I had no idea that we had this kind of marital issues or like.
Yeah. You know where that would have been really good to use is in the flashback that we spent 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe show some strife there.
100%.
The thing about this first half of the game is that there's a lot, it's setting up what seems like it's going to be a lot of payoff, right? Like there's these different moving pieces, and it's like, okay, look, this is dumb and this game is not fun, but maybe we are moving pieces into place for a big payoff later on. And then it just keeps making less and less and less sense. And one great example of that is what happens next. The Andersons stage basically a coup of the facility later that night after Alan has spent all day working on his novel, I guess. They knock out the nurse with a hammer, and Alan breaks out of the facility.
So Hartman gets eaten by the dark presence.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah, I feel like it's worth mentioning that. So Hartman's whole angle was, so there's this dark presence that lives in the town that
In the lake, like it lives under the lake.
yes,
It's a dark presence.
And-
What's it called?
It's called the Dark Presence, Brian.
yes,
What?
Yeah.
and
Whoa, it's so fucked
It's
up
this-
that they just have to call it what it is.
It's this presence of darkness.
It does vaguely. Here's the thing though about the dark
He has to
presence.
pierce it.
This is why.
Got
This
it.
is actually why it works for me, and it's because this is a game where the guy who is a professional writer says the line, "The water was clear and dark. It looked very deep." Like I buy that the ultimate villain of that game is the
Totally.
dark presence.
Right. Which
so this
manifests as a
presence-
tornado, by the way.
but it has like a symbiotic relationship with artists where you're not sure if the artist summoned the dark presence or if the dark presence was created by the artist to serve them. But so certain artists,
So it's House of Leaves now.
But in an but again, in an interesting narrative, that would be explored. In the question of like to what extent
and it is in control because
Yeah.
that's what control is sort of built on is these sort of things that are essentially spoken into being by the collective
Sure,
unconscious.
sure.
Yeah.
and so yes, certain artists either with their writing or their artistry can make manifest their creation with the assistance of the dark presence, but it's always a twisted version of that.
right.
Like as Alan writes something, it becomes true, but because it's like the kind of like classic like genie wish, where like
yeah, it's the
Or,
monkey's
the
paw.
monkey's paw. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and
So
so
he can't just write, we were fine. Everything was real cool.
but then things will be cool, but too cool, like freezing cold.
My wife was so hot and we had sex.
Yeah. This is a great episode of Night Springs.
But then Hartman's collecting artists because he wants to be able to manipulate the dark presence for his own horrible uses.
As soon as you find this out, Hartman's taken out of the picture.
And then as soon as that happens, you have to go on this really long, really stupid fucking trek around the back of the building in the goddamn woods.
There's the maze first.
Well, hedge maze. There's a hedge
fucking
maze.
hedge maze, which is my
hedge
third least favorite part of
maze.
this game.
Oh,
God.
cool. I love hedge mazes.
Don't we all?
I love depicting them. I love the experience of experiencing a virtual hedge
Oh,
maze.
it's so fun.
I like that movie with the hedge maze in it.
I wonder if a guy with an axe is going to jump out of nowhere and hit me. Oh, there he is.
Oh, there
It's
he
gonna
is.
happen. Oh, there he is again.
There he is. And
You want to do
then
that
at the-
9 more times?
And then at the end of the hedge maze, you also come across Birch, who is like an orderly from earlier. You have to fight him plus like 10 other guys. Again, with insufficient.
Big boss fight against the orderly.
yeah. And the whole time, the whole reason you have to do this is because
He's like, here, let me feed you applesauce.
I mean, he really he does say something like that.
I
don't remember what it was,
it's not that
but-
far off. But
I'm moving to Finland.
the reason why you have to fight these guys in the first place is because Barry has lost the key to the lock for the gate
Yes.
that you have to leave through. So this lasts a long time. This is a wave. This is like a couple of waves of these guys that you have to fight, and you're severely
I love
underpowered
waves.
and
I love
underleveled.
fighting waves.
And then the game has the audacity to have Barry be like, I think I found the key. Oh, no, wait.
Yeah,
it's a walnut.
There's this whole sequence, and you have to fight off
It's a
additional
walnut?
guys for like 3 minutes while Barry's like, there it is, dropped it.
Oh, you know, locks are pretty hard, Al. And you're just like, just open the fucking lock. I'm
Oh
dying.
my
Like you're gonna
God.
get axed like fully through your neck, and it's
It's
just
not
like
even a
open the
tall
gate.
gate. It's a short gate. It's
jump
like,
over it.
It's scary, right? You're feeling tense. You're
Right.
scared, right?
No,
right?
no,
Right?
I'm
no.
honestly just aggravated.
I'm just frustrated.
I'm
Yes.
just so frustrated.
No, you're scared. This made you scared. This scared you.
I'm
We're all
terrified of
spooked.
applesauce.
I always was because of Adventures in Odyssey.
The gate does open. Alan and Barry drive off now to the farm because they need to find a recording there, because the recording is the MacGuffin that's going to basically tell them how, going to tell Alan Wake how to unlock the thing that's going to defeat defeat the dark presence, right?
Okay, so because we were recording this on Wednesday, which means I was editing up through last night.
Yeah.
I only got a few hours into the long play of this game.
Yeah.
So we're in the woods now.
How does this compare with what you thought it was going to be like later on in the game, Brian?
I mean, I played Control. I know where Control ends up.
Okay.
And it's not great.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
it's a big contrast from the beginning to the end, but at the same time, you're looking for a tape?
You're looking for a record.
recording, like a record.
This is where the game lost me 100%.
So Torn.
Wait, someone did a recording of something, but on a fucking vinyl
Correct.
record
Yes.
Because
somehow?
it's a song, because it's
Yes.
Torn Odin who own
they're
the
a band.
farm.
They're a band.
They're a band.
And they
The
also
song-
and they also have on their farm an entire like a big thing because I guess they also do concerts there.
I'm sorry.
On
So
the farm.
On the farm.
these two men
Yes.
The geriatric
own a
men.
farm.
Yes.
Own a farm together.
Yes, they
I mean
do.
they
And
did.
they're in a band. Yes.
Yeah. I mean it's still theirs sort of.
And so their record. What is this record?
The
do?
record has a song on it.
The record has a song on
Yes.
it that's going to tell you what you need to do in order to defeat the dark presence. And so you have
Do
to go to the
is-
farm
Is it okay?
to get the record.
But is the payoff that the record is just put the lime in the coconut? Do you defeat the dark presence with a lime inside of a coconut?
Not that.
God, I wish.
We'll get there, but
Okay. I like the whole like idea of these like elderly rockers who are married to each other.
by the way,
That's cute.
Brian, I like this too because I'm really glad that you didn't play the rest of us because now you can just ask clarifying questions about this plot and we
I
have
don't think
to
I can
explain
ask
it.
enough. Yeah.
And
And
this
just
is
like I expected, I had to put a lime in a coconut.
this is just going to be completely
because of the
inexplicable.
doctor. Because the doctor.
You're
You
such
see,
a silly woman. Call me in the morning.
Like as they're driving in the car on the way to the farm, some boulders fall down and wet in front of the car. The car flips into a ditch. Guess what that means, Brian? Guess what you have to do next?
you get out of the car and walk the rest of the
Through
way.
the woods.
Sure
That's
fucking
right,
do.
Brian.
And we make our way. I think there's like a sawmill you have to go through first, but honestly, who cares? You get
Doesn't
to the
matter.
farm. You get to the Anderson farm.
Wait, okay, I just have to ask one question about the sawmill. Does someone get tied to something that slowly moves towards the saw?
Sadly, no.
God
No.
damn it.
No,
That would be cool.
A lot of things get thrown at you. You have to fight a train, a little choo-choo.
A little one?
Yeah, it's actually pretty small for a train.
Little baby train.
It's for the tiniest country boy. Hops on the choo-choo train. Here we go to Chattanooga.
Compared to the size of Alan Wake, how big is this train?
It's like
twice.
guy.
It's
It's
two
like guy
Allens.
size.
Yeah, it's like
It's a guy-sized train.
There's also like a bulldozer and there's like an
bulldozer,
excavator.
remember, yeah.
There's the bulldozer that comes at you. I like that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
That actually made me laugh out loud when the bulldozer came out.
So
and like,
do you stop these things by shining your flashlight on
That's
them?
correct.
until they
do.
explode. You don't even have to
Do
shoot
you
them.
shoot them to see? That's the thing. It should just be the flashlight the whole
That's
time.
correct. That's
Why
correct.
is it flashlight and then shoot them?
You
Because
should have
flares
and then you
also
have to
work.
shoot them a lot.
yeah,
flares
but that's
make
okay.
them explode.
No, but you're exactly right, Brian.
But you can't.
There's no
but
need
you can't
for guns.
shoot them before the flashlight
should
either,
not be
right?
guns
you
in
have
this
to do
game.
flashlight and then gun.
Correct. This should be strict.
You
Yes.
almost had
Yes.
something.
Yes.
You almost had something really creative, and then it's just gun.
Yes.
Plus another thing.
This should have been purely light-based combat. That would be way better because also the rules are inconsistent. Like the fact that when you shine certain types of lights on them, including
Spotlights.
spotlights, and shine them on
yeah.
people, that will disintegrate the
Oscar-winning
table.
film.
That's me in one of those.
Me too.
Losing your
in the
religion?
corner.
Wow. This middle section is really hard to track because they don't give you like big tentpole events until you get to the farm.
Right.
And the farm is one of the most baffling level designs I've ever seen in a video game because you could technically, if you could just hop over a wall, get to the end of the level.
Yes.
But instead, you have to do this like serpentine riding like elevators up
my
and
God,
down
yes.
these like grain silos in order to get to a farmhouse that you could just walk
You
to.
could literally walk to it. There's like places where there's like
Right, it's a farm. It's made to be accessible by human beings.
That's right, Brian.
Like that's just
Well, first,
like homes.
there's another wave of enemy moment where you have to like put on a rock concert.
And I actually found this moment to be fun.
I found it to be almost fun.
with the record.
This is before the record. So just to frame up, first thing that happens is that we get to a house that is near the farm. There's the local drunk is in there looking for moonshine. This is important because apparently the moonshine also gives you visions. Whatever,
because it's
who
made
cares?
from the water from the lake.
That's kind of basic level Carl Jung, so I can see that. Yeah.
So he actually
No, it is. He talks about the classical animism and things like that.
So he actually ends up getting killed by a guy who was his friend but ended up getting taken.
The drunk does?
Yes, the drunk does.
The drunk
That's
gets
the
killed
thing.
by his friend.
There's a lot of like hidden, fun little like subplots in this game that like frustrates me. There's like that moment. There's a couple other ones too that I was like, wow, that's a cool, intriguing idea.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a remnant of the whole day-night cycle open world game where you actually got to know the characters.
Yeah.
And it's what I
Rather
love
than
about
the
Control,
linear
too.
Naughty Dog type game.
Was there's all these like
the
world building in that, like gameplay aside, whatever. But I just love these little like nuggets of like kind of like love notes to the player, but like they don't amount to anything.
Yeah, in Alan Wake, yeah. An interesting thing about Control, too, is that it also focused on the main storyline, I think, to the detriment of the game in the way that Alan Wake also does. Because I think the main storyline of Control is fine, but it's like all those side characters, Jack, like you were talking about, were the reasons I kept playing, because I wanted to find out what the fuck else was happening in this facility and what happened to all these people.
Yeah, there's little videos that are very also Lost-esque, like kind of like Dharma Initiative, kind of like those were all. I loved all those little pieces, and finding those were very cool to me.
So we end up at the farm. We're on this big stage where I guess they did concerts when they had the farm.
Yeah.
Whatever. Who cares?
There's some manuscript pages that say that they had like fuck fests here, basically. Everyone would come, they'd drink the moonshine
Okay,
from the
sure.
lakes of the water and like all like trip together, basically, in the 70s.
So then the music blasts. Barry is on the ones and twos, and this sequence is almost fun.
Because they overpower the shit out of you.
Right.
They give you all the ammo you need, all like the an extremely powerful flashlight that you've never used before.
Yep.
So this rock concert does what?
Nothing.
That's a good question, Brian.
It keeps away the horde because of the lights.
So the record has some supernatural purpose, but the concert does not.
Concert
No.
is happening because there are so many taken in the area. That whole farm is rigged up with fireworks.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're
shooting
gonna
off the fireworks is
kill
going to
them.
kill all the guys. That's basically the idea here.
Okay, so then you get to kill all the guys.
Because that keeps them safe for the rest of the night.
and then there's no more enemies for the rest of the game.
Yeah, right. So then after that, we finally get to the record, and I'm going to read you the lyrics to this song. Are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
Are you ready to
Yeah,
look
I'm
for the
ready.
lyrics to the song?
Try and guess
I'm
who
so
they're
ready.
referring to, Brian.
Here we go. And now to see your love set free, you will need the witch's cabin key. Find the lady of the light gone mad with the night. That's how you'll reshape destiny. I don't know about you guys, but I have goosebumps just reading that.
I know. I'm
it's
turgid.
So the Victorian widow.
the Lantern Lady. Well, the witch is the Victorian widow, and Lantern Lady is the woman who's gone mad with the light, lady of the light gone mad with the night, right?
Log
And
Lady. You have to find Log Lady.
You have to find Log Lady, and this sets up the rest of the thing. Honestly, this is the big moment where now you know what it is that you're actually supposed to be doing, and it clarifies a few things, but then they keep making it complicated in a way that it doesn't need to be complicated.
Yeah, in a way that the game, quite frankly, can't handle it being this complicated.
Correct.
And when you find her, does she end up being Wyndham Earl in a costume?
God, if only.
Unfortunately not, no.
So Alan and Barry get drunk on the magical moonshine, and we learn that Alan was forced by that lady, like the Victorian mourner looking lady, to write a manuscript to save Alice from being taken by the darkness, I guess. He has also then written into the story a place where he can get an out from the story that he is currently within, so that he can then shape the ending in a different way. Because much like Natasha Bedingfield, the rest remains unwritten.
Oh, it's Misery.
Yes. And he is able to escape from her clutches.
It feels like for the first half, or like, you have the initial part of chapter 2 is like a bunch of stuff happens and then nothing happens.
Yes.
And then you're in the last third of this game. And then it's like, okay, well, here's the next one. It's like Final Fantasy 15.
So there is also an entire subplot with this guy named Thomas Zane, which is actually amazing important. He is the guy who is the like BioShock Big Daddy,
he's the
who's
Big
been
Daddy.
floating through all your dreams, the nozzle man.
It's
Turns
also
out-
never really like explained fully who he is. They just start throwing the name around a bunch, and you're supposed to care about him.
Yeah.
I love that they were like,
Of course, yeah.
he was really into diving. He would go to there and dive, and like the image in your head would be like, maybe scuba diving, but no. He's in a full-on fucking 18th century diving bell pressure suit with claws.
Right.
Yeah.
This is also where the timeline starts to get really confusing. When Alan's wife, fell into the lake, she got pulled under by the dark presence.
So the tornado is in the lake.
Correct.
Yes. It's like a Faust deal. It's a Faustian deal.
Yeah, it's a Faustian bargain, right? Like if he finishes writing a novel that grants the tornado more power, because again, his words can shape reality, his wife will be released from the lake. However,
Don't his words shape reality because that thing is allowing his words to shape
So
reality?
weird symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, sure. Okay, it's a feedback. Okay.
Yeah, it is feedback.
Exactly.
I'll accept it.
And this happened once
for
before
now.
with Thomas Zane, whose wife in like the 50s or 60s died, and he made a bargain with the dark presence to bring her back to life, but she was possessed by the dark presence, and then he was forced to write himself. He was forced to do basically the exact same plot as Alan Wake, but he decided that the best way to do that, he basically did a Spider-Man No Way Home and erased himself from all of existence. So no one's ever heard of Thomas Zane, who was apparently a very famous writer beforehand. Because if Thomas Zane doesn't exist, then the Dark Presence also doesn't exist.
But it does exist.
But it does
and again,
exist.
that's why it's like
I want to die. I want to die. Recapping this, it's actively making me want to die.
Okay.
And Thomas Zane was the guy in the diving bell?
Yes.
But people knew about the guy in the diving bell because he existed.
No,
But Thomas Zane doesn't exist.
He's sort
Nobody
of like,
knows about
he's
it
like
but Alan.
Schrodinger's diver, right? He exists and doesn't exist at the same time.
So there was another writer.
Yes.
He encountered the darkness. The darkness took his wife. He wrote himself out of that situation.
Yes.
Well, first he wrote his wife back to life, and then he also realizing.
And she's the Victorian widow?
Yes.
Okay. And so now, because some time has passed, it's happening again.
Right.
Yes.
It is happening again.
It's
To Alan.
I think Alan's presence has reawakened it.
Because he is such an artistic
He's
genius.
He's just so talented.
It's like a battery being close to, it's like.
And so Victorian widow is making him write this other manuscript because that brings her husband back?
Because the dark presence is making her do
Is
it.
inside her. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Victorian widow is not a real person. It's just the form that the dark presence takes.
Right.
Yeah,
We
it's
can,
like
see.
he's wearing a skin suit, basically.
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah, me too. So then we get to episode 5, The Clicker. At this point, Alan's back in jail because Agent Nightingale showed up and called him,
Oh my God.
I don't know, James Joyce or something, and threw him back in jail. He keeps landing in jail. And then darkness falls. Nightingale gets sucked out by a tornado. He gets sucked off by a tornado too. It sucks you off. And
That's
Alan,
the great thing about the dark presence. It sucks you off.
It sucks you off.
Alan heads then toward town hall with Sarah, the sheriff from before.
In a sequence that I think is actually pretty cool. Like you're battling through the town of Bright Falls.
We then proceed to a church, and outside the church, we have another one of these big moments where there's like 20 guys, and you have to fight off all of the guys and die lots of times while you do it.
While we're waiting for her to unlock the door.
That's so scary.
There's nothing scarier than
so
fighting guys while
scared.
somebody tries to unlock a door.
I'm scared like fuck. Oh no. Oh no. Alan.
We need to get to the chopper from here. We proceed on.
We need to get to the chopper.
We proceed on to where there's a helicopter, and once again, there's another big battle here with another 20 guys.
At this part, you also reach an episode of Night Springs. It was just like the writers gave up entirely. It's about two women who go downstairs and find a hole in reality, and then a writer appears in the hole in reality, and they're like, what are you doing here? He's like, well, if you ladies could kindly leave. I don't know. I started this story about two women coming downstairs and finding a hole in reality, and now I really don't know what to do. And they're like, what? But we're real. And he's like, go upstairs and make coffee. You're like, okay.
I can't
And the
believe you
episode-
actually watched all of this shit.
I loved him.
The
Yeah.
episode ends with this line. It's a fine line between the stupid and the sublime in Night Springs.
Video games are so bad, guys.
Then he has to go to the dam, which really more like a goddamn. This is where the well-lit room is. This is a big deal. There's a well-lit room that the Taken can't get to because of how well lit it is. And then there's a fucking fetch quest. You have to go out to a place and you have to fucking cut the power to the goddamn thing.
You have to solve a dam, like a bridge dam puzzle.
Yeah, Jesus
There's a
Christ.
stupid fucking puzzle.
It's it's the one time that puzzle was used in the entire game, because I think they did it. It was like, fuck it, we'll never do that again.
Finally, I finished the fucking puzzle. I can go back. But then guess what happens? Barry and Sarah's helicopter fucking crashes. So you have to go to the helicopter and you have to go find them.
Wait, Josh, where is the helicopter?
It's in the woods.
We gotta go back to the woods.
So we go back to the fucking woods.
Hey, it's just like Lost. We have to go back.
So you've got a fetch quest followed by a fetch quest followed by another fucking escort mission. It's like all of the things that are known for being not fun about games. And they just take them and they combine them together and they just do it back to back to back to back to back to back, all in the context of a story that sucks ass.
That's why this game was so savaged by the critics, right? It got a 5 out of 5 from the Independent. It got a 4 out of 4 from the Associated Press, a 9 out of 10 from the Daily Telegraph,
again because
a 9 out of 10 from IGN, a 6 out of 10 from Wired.
Well, at least Wired knew what they were talking
Yeah,
about.
4 out of 5 from GamePro, and 8.5 out of 10 from GameSpot.
So,
a B plus from OneUp.com.
So in one
a
of the
7 out of 10 from Eurogamer, and an 8.5 out of 10 from Game Informer.
So one of the best reviewed games of all time ends its 5th episode with you finally getting the MacGuffin that will destroy the darkness forever.
Right.
Is that the record, or what is it now?
No, the MacGuffin is the clicker, yeah.
Yes.
The clicker?
Yeah, it's the thing that Alan Wake's mom gave to him to fight off the darkness when he was a child.
Along with the clicker, we discover a page that was written by Thomas Zane.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess also Alan Wake's reality is being created by Thomas Zane?
Because Thomas Zane wrote Alan Wake's reality into his story before he erased himself from existence.
Wait, so is Alan Wake, like, was he not born? He was just created by Thomas Zane?
He was born, but Thomas Zane wrote an injunction into his life saying that pretty much the whole clicker thing and Alan's mom giving him this clicker was a machination of Thomas Zane.
Yeah, it's like
Wasn't
an
this
implanted
50 years
false
ago?
memory.
Yes, it was.
Alan Wake's not 50 years old,
I mean,
is
let's
he?
also appreciate, too, that, like, 30 years ago, these two fucking Nordic god guys wrote a song and pressed it on vinyl specifically to help this dude who they hadn't met find
the target for their fetch quest. Yeah.
They're like, we're just gonna need this. Let's write a fucking song about this in 1970.
And let's leave it in a barn for 30 years.
But we're gonna make that barn so hard to get to. Oh man, you're gonna have to ride so many grain elevators
and levers, and you're gonna have to fucking.
Here's the thing, you know, some rope guys just get so into rope they forget about the sex, you know, and so then that's what happened here. Is they both just started doing suspensions for like things in the barn.
You know what? That's actually the best explanation I think you can possibly come up with for why this happened.
So we're in the woods, crashed helicopter, the woods.
We got the clicker.
No, actually, that's not where we are. Top of episode 6 actually has us now in a back in Alan's apartment.
Suck my dick, Josh. Suck it. Shut up. Stop writing this video game the way that it's written.
Only the dark presence can suck me off. That's why I had to go invite it.
This is a flashback again to, like, I guess when Alan went on TV to talk about his book. And this is really funny because you had the people who recorded the voiceover and you had the people who recorded the live action. And I don't know if...
Why did they do it live action? Why didn't they do it just as a fucking like motion capture?
Hey, that's a great question, Brian. But so what you end up getting then is these fucking clearly Scandinavian guys who are absolutely 100% not American. Yeah. One of the guys is the live action actor for Alan Wake. The other guy
is like a talk show host. It's also like if you watch the whole thing, it's like 6 minutes long. You can turn it off whenever you want.
I watched the whole thing.
I watched the whole thing.
And
after first getting Advil and sunglasses and being yelled at by my wife.
Yeah, because you're hungover. Yeah, because Alan Wake
Just
has
like
a
my
drinking
kind of
problem.
normal Monday morning. Am I right?
Is it
folks?
interrupted by like a Verizon ad, Josh?
Oh, I
I wish too. But they introduced this alcoholism thing for Alan Wake in the final episode, and at this point, I'm like,
By the way, alcoholic.
sure.
And she's like angry that he went out and celebrated being on TV for the first time, which is like such an odd hill to die on, I feel like.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, again, like in a better written version of this, it would be that this is the latest example of alcoholism and like saying that you're going to do one thing and actually
Totally.
doing something else entirely. But you're right. It doesn't actually, I think I inferred that. But the reality is the script is written just said, hey, you went out last night for your book release party. You said you'd be home at midnight and you weren't. And then they like make up
And you're
immediately
hungover.
too.
How could you?
Yeah. How could you?
Okay. So he did this interview. He got drunk. He came
Yes.
home. Wife's
Yes.
mad.
Wife
Yes,
mad.
and then they immediately make up.
And then we're back. We're back in the woods.
Yes.
No, now it's daytime.
No, we're not in the woods.
No.
Now we're on top of the dam and it's become daytime all of a sudden.
Oh, it's
Remember?
yeah, we're at the goddamn now.
Yeah.
It's the sun is shining.
So
Yeah, because he
Gavin
pushed the
McGuffin,
clicker.
He clicked
pushed the
it,
clicker.
and suddenly night has become day.
Come on.
So guys, so we gotta go to Cauldron Lake.
We
gotta go.
You know what's it
18
called?
miles away.
We gotta get there.
It's the furthest
18
away.
naked cowboys in the
At
showers
Ram
at
Ranch.
Ram Ranch.
Brian,
Yeah.
how do you think we get there?
Let me say, he considers walking through the woods, but it's a little too far. So how else?
It's too far this time.
It is too
Yes.
far.
This time, and well, he does walk
Do
through
we-
the forest for a bit.
Yeah.
Do we drive a car?
We do.
Sure
Drive a
fucking
car.
do, baby.
Oh,
Pedal
boy.
to the metal.
There's so much
But
driving
you
on so
only
many
drive
roads.
halfway there because there's a car pile up and you have to walk.
And then you walk.
the
And
rest.
then you
of
walk
the
through the
way.
woods again.
to walk across this stupid fucking bridge.
Why isn't there a MacGuffin that just brings him there? Why does he have a
died.
magical fucking
We have to
pencil?
film a whole
That
or
last
some
episode.
shit?
bridge.
We have to plow the whole
So
episode.
the game.
I
the
love
game
to
at
drive
this
my
point,
car. I love to do a production of Uncle Vanya.
The game at this point has thrown
Jack is signing his displeasure
so
right now.
many objects at you, literally. And
Yeah, right.
you
They're
get
like,
to
oh,
this-
here's all the fun
and you
things that
get
we figured
to
out
this
how to program.
fucking bridge, and this bridge is the bridge of all bridges.
It spins.
And
It's a turntable.
no, not that
not the
bridge.
bridge?
I'm talking about
There's
the
a
bridge.
different bridge.
This is not the
You get to
turntable.
this bridge, Jack. You explain the bridge. I'm freaking
So yeah,
out.
it's pretty much it's the bridge I described earlier, but just 6 times longer. Where
And more difficult.
Pretty much every object on the bridge is flying at you. There's taken left and
Yeah,
right, and then
at
it
the
comes to
dumpster,
one moment
yeah.
where you step around a corner, and suddenly
A corner of the bridge.
no, there's like a pile up. So there's like a semi truck, and like there's all this like debris and shit on the bridge. So you step around a corner, and
Yep.
suddenly the way back is cut off, and
Right.
there's
Wanna
about
go
6
home?
feet of space in front of you, and directly in front of
Yep.
you is like a thresher truck, like a street
Yep.
sweeper that comes to life and begins attacking you. You have
Yes.
zero room to maneuver.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
great.
pretty much the thing just like drives forward 6 feet and murders you.
Right.
And then you respawn and you do that.
have to do that
about
over?
24 times until you finally.
Yeah, and you might wonder.
Do you just dodge roll past
There
it
are
or
no dodge
something?
rolls.
Well, you try, but you can't. And here's the thing: you might be wondering,
Do you shine the flash?
when you
No, it's
when you
daytime.
when you respawn, surely
Yeah.
you'll be respawning right by where you died. No,
Oh, I forgot
you
that too.
respawn
God
at the
damn. You
beginning
gotta
of
back to
the
fucking
bridge.
bridge.
Oh, it's Dark Souls. It's Dark Souls.
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes.
So you
My only mistake was playing this
But
fucking
it's
game.
daytime, so you're not shining
No,
a
it is
flashlight.
nighttime.
No, it's
It
nighttime.
became
It's
You
nighttime.
go through a tunnel and then suddenly it's night again.
Because the dark
Yeah.
presence is going to try and stop
Well, then
you.
why don't you flick the switch again?
That's
You
a
have
great
it.
That's a great
question,
question,
Brian.
It's a brilliant.
It's in your pocket.
That's a great question.
So, by the way, this is
So you
also
have to use your flashlight to stop the street combine?
Yes,
Yes,
that is correct.
But also,
Or a
just
flare gun.
to point up one other thing as well. When you flick the fucking clicker, that's also the point at which Alan and other Alan,
of
like he
shit.
splits into 2 different Allens.
yes,
and
bitch-ass
so
motherfucker.
and the other Alan is just like bye.
damn it, I'm
But he matters later, I think.
The other
Anyway,
personality is named Mr.
Kill
Scratch.
you with a fucking
yes.
dog. I'll throw you in a goddamn ditch with a dog, and that dog's gonna
So
eat
2
you.
hours
It's gonna
later, you
dog
get
Cujo?
kill you. He's so skinny. He's
that dog
thin. He's
Cujo?
hungry. And he's hungry for you. And I'm gonna feed you. I'm gonna feed you to the dog.
You good, Brian?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm not allowed in Helsinki anymore.
Go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say, like, 2 hours later, you somehow finally, through sheer luck alone, there's no strategy or skill involved.
None.
You get past this stupid-ass fucking Thresher whatever
good.
combine.
Good for us. Good for me.
And then
good
I
for
forget
you.
what happened. Then you go drive some more, I think.
Go into a tornado and you shoot flare guns into the tornado until the tornado dies.
And
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And then what ends up happening, because earlier the lamp lady said that the whole reason that Thomas Zane wasn't successful is that you can't write your way around death. Like a sacrifice has to be made. So Alan Wake gives up his life so that Alice might live and throws himself into the dark presence, the dark world, basically.
Wait, but that's what Billy Zane did.
So the Titanic sinks into the caldera. No.
Caldera.
Thank you. So the end of this game, because I'm cutting to the end of this game.
Please do.
That wasn't the end?
The end of the...
No, I mean, the ending is the cutscene that happens after you shoot the tornado.
So the
basically.
camera pans over Bright Falls, and there's terrible narration, and it pans over all the people celebrating. It turns out that everyone you killed actually isn't dead. They're back to life, and they're all hugging and they're dancing.
It's Deerfest.
It's Deerfest.
Well, and again, because Alan sacrificed himself, Christ-like, right?
Yeah.
You know, he died so these others can live.
Yeah, so the whole narrative's been erased. Rose the waitress, she is now the new lamp lady, but she also maybe still be possessed, ? So it's like a huge cliffhanger of like, oh, will the dark presence return? And then the game just kind of ends.
It ends with Alan working on his thing and saying, it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
When you play through the commentary, Sam Lake really emphasizes how affected the Alan Wake fans are by the line, it's not a lake, it's an ocean.
It's meaningless.
It's a meaningless line. It's just that what you thought was like the end is actually there's just so much more. Like it's so much bigger than you could ever imagine.
And really what Lucy and Edmund had realized that they had not finished the chapter of their book, but they were merely on the table of contents and the title page, and the real book was just beginning.
Yes.
I want to be abundantly clear about something. It's not an ocean. It's a lake.
It's literally
No, it's
a lake.
literally
It's
just a
literally
It's
a
in a
lake, you
caldera.
guys.
Yeah, but underneath that lake is a black void that leads to, I guess, a dark world, which, okay, so I just want to very briefly mention the DLC.
Very briefly.
Because I'm not going to talk about the plot of it other than...
Alan Wake's American Nightmare.
That's the sequel.
Alan Wake... the DLC, it's called The Signal and the Writer. It's all one story. The basic idea is that it's Alan in the dark place trying to escape the dark place. And the problem with it is that the gameplay is actually infinitely better than the base game. Because they finally implement the flashlight in a cool and interesting way. In the dark place, objects aren't objects, they're words. So you point the flashlight at a word and then it pops into being. And that's like, okay, they do that a little bit in the base game, but in this one you can use it for like strategic advantages. There's one that just says bang, that if you shine the flashlight on, it explodes in like a big group explosion. And then there's other areas that say things like enemy, and if you shine your flashlight on that one, it activates. But since he always has his flashlight on, you have to like figure out how to finagle it and get through the area without shining your light on a place too long, or you'll summon like a whole horde of enemies.
Sure.
So it starts getting into like some actually really cool and like trippy territory. It's very clear that they were like moving towards the design of control a little bit more, so the area designs get much better. It basically takes all the assets from the base game and then just kind of slaps them together kind of haphazardly, so it feels like more of a nightmare and it's a lot more interesting. It actually vaguely made me excited for Alan Wake 2 because the writing got a lot better in the DLC.
Which, okay, so let's be very clear. Alan Wake 2 is going to be the third Alan Wake game.
Well, we've done it, guys. We've fucking recapped Alan Wake.
What have we done?
What
did Alan...
It also ends with Space Oddity, by the way.
Yeah.
They
licensed...
What? Baffling
They
choice.
Licensed Space Oddity.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it end with Lime and the Coconut?
That's a great
Would
question,
have
Brian.
been much better.
Right. That has something to do, you
So what if
played that song earlier at least.
So what have we learned at the end of all this? After recapping that whole thing, Jack, what is your final sort of standing on Alan Wake? What can we take away from it? What can we learn from it? What's the overall lesson of this writer's odyssey?
There is an alluring danger to being sucked into, I don't know.
Your own asshole.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. It feels like it wants to be a game about the dangers of the creative process.
Yeah.
Right. About a guy who gets writer's block and then like pushes everyone away from him, anyone he loves away from him, and how dangerous that can be and how all encompassing that can be. And what was I think very interesting is that when you listen to Sam Lake on the commentary, it seems like a very personal game to him. Like it really is like him working his way through the writer's block that came after doing the first 2 Max Payne games. And on a level, like that's not a terrible idea for a game, having a writer go through writer's block and actually have to battle like the demons that keep him from producing his creative output. But like
a Barton Fink video game.
Yeah, I mean that would at least be interesting, but this game, it just doesn't delve deep enough. Like it doesn't get.
You know what it reminds me of is a mixtape. I feel like it's something that like it was crafted with love, and it shows off, you know, what this guy enjoys in his background and what he thinks is cool and interesting. But like it just at the end of the day adds nothing new to the conversation.
Given that this is in a lot of ways something personal, you made the mixtape analogy, and it's like, yeah, you know, this is clearly somebody talking a little bit about his process. Was there anything to you, looking through even all of the bullshit and the bad game design, was there anything in it that spoke to you about writing or being a writer in any meaningful way?
I feel like it was superficial, the writing elements of this. It referenced Alan Wake's writing, but we never saw any kind of showcase aside from like some images of like the book covers. The only writing we saw was the manuscript pages, but those were much more like, I mean, there's no like narrative to them. They were just telling us what was about to happen in the game. That, you know, I feel like if you read them sequentially, they wouldn't have offered any kind of story.
Yeah, it's referencing other writers' stories about dealing with writing.
Yes, it was a collage.
And you know, because it's like House of Leaves or The Shining or a little bit of Misery. And so it's not any of his own feelings about the writer's block or anything like that.
Yeah, if he had maybe a story that he was trying to like grapple with or like find a conclusion to or like craft around.
And he's such a fucking nothing as a character. We hear that people are a fan of his writing. We certainly don't understand why. It's not as if the pages are well written. It's certainly not as if he has any sort of an inner developed life that would lead to being a good writer. Why, and this is just for all of you, why did people like this game so much? I'm genuinely trying to understand that.
I was wondering if it was like, was this novel at the time, this narrative structure?
This literally came out the same weekend as Red Dead Redemption, the first one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it hurt its business for a little while, but it ended up making a lot of money. So this year in 2010, we also have Mass Effect 2, God of War 3.
Man, this is even worse. I was giving this game a pass because I thought it was like novel or kind of, but like,
right.
I think it was enough of a thing where like video game writing was stunted enough still that people come across something like this or come across something Western like this, and they're like, oh, whoa, hey, look at this. Look at this. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
look at this amazing story. I don't know. I've played a lot of AAA games from the more recent years in the last couple of years, and a lot of them kind of felt like this.
Yeah.
And not just Control, which kind of gets there at the end, and it starts really strong. But I think there's so many challenges that come to making a game, especially when you're pacing things in terms of like, when is your production schedule actually putting together the pieces of the script, and when does that stuff get frozen, right, as you develop the rest of the game. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of pacing issues and a lot of these weird plotting issues, because this started as a totally different game, and I wonder how much of it was just, you know, shredded and restarted versus just like, well, let's take these pages out, let's take these pages out, let's take these pages out, and then leave this weird thing in the middle.
When I look at these reviews, it's like, did you play a different game? I mean, I'm looking at this review from The Escapist, right? It doesn't look like it at first, but Alan Wake is an incredibly scary game, setting its stage with familiar, ordinary locations like a cabin in the woods or the local diner, and twisting them into something malicious.
That makes it sound like there's multiple locations, but it's just mostly
I love that
woods.
they've taken that typically very charming and pleasant experience of being at a cabin in the woods and turned it scary for the first time in my life.
It like, bottom line here, it says, bottom line, a brilliantly told story, excellent voice acting, and an atmosphere so unnerving you'll sleep with the lights on for a month.
Excellent voice acting is the one that made me just like snap a pencil I was holding in half.
The Kotaku review, and of course they don't leave scores, but it said, for the first time in my life, I have experienced something that plays like a game, but has the impact of a movie.
Right.
And I think that's really important too, is like, a lot of the measuring stick people were using to say, is this story good, is did it start to feel like a movie at some point in my experience?
Yes, and I think too that like this points as well to our game's art discourse was like really hitting a peak, you know?
And because they were so mad at Roger Ebert specifically.
And so they made a game that in many ways does feel like a movie. To be honest, it's not a movie I would ever want to watch, but it is pointing in that direction. And I think for a lot of people, that was enough.
My experience, like just watching the early parts, I thought, oh, okay, it's a horror game that's not super hard, because I feel like horror games tend to be really hard. Even Resident Evil 4 is pretty fucking hard.
There's a game. Did you ever play? It was like Criminal Intent or Criminal Origin that came out.
Oh, Condemned Criminal Origins. Yes.
I feel like that game did everything Alan Wake wants to do, but just so much better.
But it didn't want to impersonate a movie. And it's funny that Condemned doesn't really get remembered at this era either, because it was a launch title for the Xbox 360. They made a sequel.
Yeah.
What was so successful about it though, Jack?
Well, I think actually the first person accomplishes quite a bit in putting you in the character, which is, something I just gravitate towards more. But it has the same kind of like you're disempowered. It's resource scarcity. But it's also the same kind of like you have to go to the library. It's an abandoned, condemned library. You have to go to the airport. The airport is full of drug addicts and it's been on fire for 2 years. Because you're a detective in it, the story just unfolds in a much more organic way, and because you're discovering. And I don't remember the finer points of the narrative, but it did feel cinematic to me from what I remember. Maybe that's just the age I was when I was playing it, or
I don't feel like Condemned is impersonating anything, and again, at this point, a lot of these critics and a lot of capital G gamers wanted games that impersonated things. They wanted it to impersonate a movie. And then what kind of movie? Well, maybe a movie based on a Stephen King novel. And we hadn't had that. Like that hadn't been a part of video gaming, right? This wasn't zombies, even though it's pretty much just zombies. It wasn't Resident Evil. It wasn't fixed camera. It was like, it was trying to be a little bit more accessible. It's not super gory, it's not a super intense game. So I can see how maybe if someone wants to try a horror game, but they're not into like fucked up shit, maybe this was their way in. Sure. But like, boy, it's just,
It's a real slog. Is there anything that you'd like to plug? I know that you and I both just wrote for the 24-hour plays.
The Fled Collective. That's my first time working with them. I had a really good time. Yeah,
it was a really, really fun time. And we'll obviously include the link to that in the description of this episode, so people can go give it a look-see.
I have nothing. I'm only just now coming out of the comatose state I've been in for the last 2 years with COVID and
coming out of your cage, and you've been doing just fine.
Someone was like, listen to that song and imagine Jerry Seinfeld is the one singing it. Like just listen to the song and hold the image of Jerry Seinfeld in your head, and it works. And now it's ruined forever.
It makes the woman he's singing about much younger.
So when I think about Alan Wake, my mind just keeps circling back like the feedback loop of Thomas Zane and the Dark Presence back to that fucking Night Springs episode that ends with the line, "It's a fine line between the stupid and the sublime in Night Springs." And this game is the former, but I'm truly hopeful that Alan Wake 2 will be the latter. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And I'm Jack.
I also just say, if you want a sublime experience, just buy a different game. It's not any sequel to Alan Wake. Don't reward the Finns.
That's right.
They've done enough.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
I'm Alan Wake, and that was another episode of the worst of all possible worlds.
As always, we are brought to you not by the average New Mexican, who is, of course, me, but instead brought to you by our many patrons at Patreon, who are you, the ones listening to this, because this is a patron episode. Anyway, a special thanks to our newest Grand Inquisitors. That includes Z, J.D. Harper, Matthew Johansson, Franklin Mays, Nancy Carr, Murray McCann, and Zach Toes. And of course, very special thank you to our Pangloss patrons. And they are
Alexa Valentine, Ashley Stoneman, Dara Swisher, Hannah White, John Johnson, Nikola Donov, Sam Borman, Silverbear 909, Timmy Sexton, and Tony Diddy. I'm Alan Wake, and I'm a writer.